Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. We bring you hundreds of novel audiobooks covering every genre and every kind of story you can imagine. Action? We've got it. Adventure? Absolutely. Horror? Of course. Whether it's the legendary Uchiha Massacre or outrageous tales like stealing Naruto's and Sasuke's women, you'll find it here. From epic series like One Piece, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Hunter x Hunter, to countless other adventures, our library has it all. Love novels but don't have time to read? No worries, just plug in your earbuds, sit back, and let the story take over. Good listening, and happy hearing. Siri-eyed AI can't. Unless Yamamoto Genri Uzai Shigekuni still lives, no one will dare allow the first Kinpachi to continue existing. Ain wasn't worried about Anohana becoming a problem. As long as Yamamoto Genri Uzai was killed, the entire structure of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards held together by his force and prestige would fall apart. At that point, Anohana might not even stand against him. After all, Ain was still a Shinigami. Not a Quincy. If Yamamoto could control her, then so could he. He could dominate this battle-hungry and blood-soaked first-generation Kinpachi. Aizen didn't respond. His gaze remained fixed in the direction Anohana had gone. You're thinking about killing her. Ain stared at Aizen with a faint smile. He could read the thoughts behind Aizen's quiet stare. No, Aizen said, shaking his head slightly. I was just wondering if there's a better method than killing Captain Anohana. Because when we reach the highest point of this world, there must be someone standing beneath the throne. You're right, brother. Aizen chuckled softly. To kill the first-generation Kinpachi. In the eyes of Soul Society, such a thing would shake the heavens. But in Aizen's mouth, it sounded ordinary, as if the one he spoke of killing was just a random low-ranked Shinigami. Yamamoto Genri Uzai Shigekuni. Ain calmly spoke the name. Aizen's eyes lit up. I see. That's a good plan. He nodded slightly, fully understanding. Behind the mountains of the Shino Academy, Shioi Yoruichi moved silently through the forest, leaping from tree to tree. It looked relaxed, like a stroll through the garden, but each step made her vanish and reappear 10 meters away. Even now, there was already a glimpse of her future as the goddess of flash. Shup. Dozens of quick movements across the treetops. With every flash step, the dense foliage overhead slowly began to clear, until her vision opened to a cliff. And at the edge sat a young man, cross-legged, Zanpakuto resting across his lap, clearly meditating. Communing with his sword. Found you. Yoruichi's eyes lit up. A playful glint appeared in her golden eyes as she crept closer on silent feet. Meanwhile, Ain sat on the cliff's edge, soaking in the golden sunrise as it bathed Siri-eyed AI in soft light. But his attention was half turned inward. He was observing the results of his recent training in hand-to-hand combats. Sweat poured off his body, his chest rising and falling. Through focused effort and careful integration of textbook physical theory, your hand-to-hand combats has birthed a new set of martial arts that combines attack, defense, evasion, and footwork. You have named it, Shinigami Marine 6 Styles. 6 Styles. Seeing the result of his progress, a faint smile appeared on his lips. Then, without turning, he sensed a spiritual pressure approaching from behind. The corner of his mouth twitched up. Bakudo number 4, Kainawa. Just as Yoruichi got within 5 meters of him, a voice suddenly whispered beside her ear. A golden rope of spiritual energy shot forward like a serpent, coiling around her limbs. But before the binding could tighten, Yoruichi's body shimmered. Her form fading, leaving behind only her outer robe, which was promptly caught by the Kido. Bound and hanging there. Empty. Ain raised an eyebrow but didn't turn around. Flash goddess indeed. Chapter 42. Challenge accepted. Compared to Kendo, I'm weaker than you. Compared to spiritual pressure, I'm still weaker than you. Even in sword art, I fall short. But when it comes to flash steps... Shioi Yoruichi's tone sharpened, her eyes gleaming with excitement and confidence. That's one thing I'm absolutely confident in. This is the third technique of the Four Maples. Tatsuzumi. Watch closely, Ain. Her figure blurred. The next moment, a flash of black and gold streaked across the air. Yoruichi's movement was so fast, it left after images in every direction. In the blink of an eye, she was right behind Ain, reaching out with one hand to grab his shoulder. Bakudo number 61, 6 rods prison of light. Just as her palm came within 10 centimeters of his back. Boom. A sudden burst of golden light erupted behind Ain, radiant and overwhelming. 6 rods of light materialized instantly. But they didn't stop at 6. Each one split into 10, forming a dazzling web of light. 60 golden pillars. Interlocking perfectly, completely surrounding Shioi Yoruichi from every angle. What? Her movements froze in midair. Even her cat-like agility couldn't find a way out of the trap. The rod sealed all routes of escape, boxing her in like an unbreakable cage. You. Anne. When did you master Kita-level simulcast techniques? Yoruichi gritted her teeth, shocked. In front of the golden lattice, even if she stripped down to nothing but her soul, there was no way to slip through. Didn't you read the Keto encyclopedia? Anne replied casually, still looking out over the forested mountains behind the Spiritual Arts Academy. Simulcasting low-tier Keto is child's play. You just need to understand the rhythm and flow. Maybe for basic Hado or low-rank Bakudo, Yoruichi countered, eyes wide. But this is Bakudo number 61, 6 rods Prison of Light. You used it 10 times in a row. That's not just about precision. It's about raw spiritual pressure and absolute control. She was shaking her head in disbelief, staring at him as though he were a walking impossibility. Even the captains can't just throw out 10 simultaneous Rikijokoro without degrading the power of each cast. Not to mention doing it without a chant. Anne didn't respond immediately. He merely raised an eyebrow and turned to face her fully. Did I say I used a pseudo-chant? Yoruichi narrowed her eyes. If not pseudo-chanting, then what? Abandonment chant. His voice was calm, almost matter-of-fact. Not pseudo. Not dual. Not reinforced. Just abandonment. Abandonment chant. Yoruichi frowned, racking her brain. She had never seen that term in any training manual or scroll. Never heard of it? No surprise, Anne said with a soft chuckle. I invented it. You what? Yoruichi's mouth fell open like a fish gasping for air. You created a new Keto casting technique? When? 2 days ago. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Anne, are you sure you're a Shinigami? Are you even the same species as the rest of us? I mean, come on. 6 years in the academy, and I've never heard of someone doing that. First, you create your own sword art. Then you pin Hirako Shinji to a wall with a single strike. And now you're throwing out 10 fully powered Rikijokoro without chanting, like it's nothing? Anne simply shrugged. And you. What are you doing here? He asked, brushing aside the compliments. Aren't you supposed to be skipping school and hiding from nobles? What brings the Flash Goddess in training all the way out to the mountains? He didn't want to get too deep into his own progress. He couldn't exactly explain that ever since Anohano Yachiru came to him that night and challenged him beneath the moonlight. Declaring him the true Kinpachi. Everything had changed. Swordsmanship had become a battlefield of pride and dominance. Even his Zanpakuto, Kafuin, had awakened its Benkei, developing an arrogant will of its own. Judging everything from Kendo to Keto with disdain. If not for that competitive pressure, Anne wouldn't have pushed himself this far in Keto. Not just for strength, but to silence that arrogant sword. So, in just a few days, he pushed himself to master Hado and Bakudo, creating a new style of chanting altogether. And what he created was revolutionary. The abandonment chant combined the best traits of 3 techniques: abandon chanting, using only the Keto name, without any verbal spell, relying on pure spiritual pressure. Double chanting, a high-level technique where 2 Keto are woven together and released simultaneously. Pseudo-chanting, a simplified version that sacrifices power for speed and utility. But Anne went further. His abandonment chorus allowed him to cast multiple Keto at once, even high-level spells. 2, 3, even 10 at once. While maintaining their full power. And the cost? Far less than the classic double chanting. This technique was so refined, it could replace older styles entirely. And it worked for any Keto rank. Even the Elite Hado number 90, Black Coffin series. That's impossible, Yoruichi finally muttered, her voice a whisper. Even if I had your raw power, that level of control. It's like you were born to master Keto. Maybe I was, Anne replied calmly. Or maybe I just trained harder than anyone else. TCH. Modest too, huh? She sighed, still tangled in goldenrods, then narrowed her eyes with a smirk. Okay, genius. How about letting me out now? Anne chuckled and snapped his fingers. The goldenrods vanished instantly, fading into sparks. Yoruichi stretched her limbs, cracking her knuckles. Alright then. Since we're on the topic of training, how about a little wager next time? She grinned. If you can master Shunko within a week, I'll acknowledge you as my equal in flash steps. Anne raised an eyebrow. Shunko? The fusion of Keto and hand-to-hand combats? Exactly. She flicked his forehead playfully. Let's see if you can handle more than just shiny lights and elegant chants, Mr. Genius. Anne turned to look at the sunrise blooming over Syriite AI. Challenge accepted. Chapter 43, Not Even You. Weren't you supposed to be training your Bankai for the upcoming fight with Hirako Shinji? I noticed you've been skipping classes for days. Especially hand-to-hand combats class. So I came to check on you. Thought I'd help you catch up a little. A private lesson. But instead? You hit me with a whole wave of 6 rod light prisons. No. 60. You hit your makeup tutor with 60 of them, An. Is this how you treat people coming to help? Shioi Yoruichi crossed her arms, clearly annoyed, her pride taking a hit. Her words were sharp, but not angry. Just incredulous, as if she were saying, "Are you for real?" Compared to the aura of Anohana Yachiru, her Shinigami pancake form might be a bit less imposing, but she was no less fierce. "I'm skipping hand-to-hand combats class for a reason," An replied calmly. "Missing one class won't slow down my progress. Teacher Ishin knows. He's the one who signed off on my leave." Hearing that Yoruichi had shown up to help him catch up on hand-to-hand combats class made An look at the chocolate-skinned girl in front of him for a brief second, then he gently refused. Let her teach him hand-to-hand combats? If it was the future chocolate lightning goddess, maybe she'd be qualified. But now, even if she was decent, his hand-to-hand combats wouldn't accept her. What if he agreed to practice, and hand-to-hand combats simply refused to cooperate? Rather than deal with that kind of rebellion, it was better to keep training hand-to-hand combats himself. Until it caught up with his Kido, Kendo, spiritual pressure, flash steps, and his Zanpakuto mastery. What? You think I'm not good enough to teach you? Yoruichi's golden eyes narrowed. I won't brag about other skills, but when it comes to hand-to-hand combats and flash steps, there's no one in the entire Spiritual Arts Academy who can match me. Not even you. If you don't believe me, let's spar. No Zanpakuto, no Kido, no sword techniques. Just hand-to-hand combats and flash steps. Let's see who wins. Her lips curved into a challenging grin. Your hand-to-hand combats is very dissatisfied with Shioi Yoruichi's provocation. It demands a duel to defend its name. Starting tonight, it will stay up late every day to master a new Shinigami body technique. An hadn't planned to take this seriously. But hand-to-hand combats was too eager. Its determination was intense. And its offer tempting. Stay up every night to master a new body technique? That was an offer he couldn't ignore. Fine, An said. Since you're so eager, let's do it. But don't say I bullied you if you lose. I'll let you make the first 3 moves. That sentence instantly lit the fire in Yoruichi's blood. You're the one who's going to cry. And I don't need you to go easy on me. She vanished from sight in a blur of black. Lightning quick, she appeared in front of An with a fist aimed straight at his face. Even though her hand looked delicate, her strike packed a punch that could split the air. An didn't even stand. He remained seated in a cross-legged posture and simply tilted his head. Just enough to avoid the incoming jab. Snort. Yoruichi clicked her tongue and switched her attack. Her extended fist suddenly became a claw aimed straight at An's face. If it landed, it would have torn through stone like tofu. Whoosh. But An didn't block or dodge wildly. Still sitting, he just leaned his head backward ever so slightly, letting her claw miss him again with the smallest motion possible. Let's see you dodge this. Yoruichi's irritation was clear now. She swept forward in a rising kick meant to slam into An's chest. The power behind it could have sent even an iron pillar flying. But what she saw next stunned her. An's upper body twisted like a snake, his spine bending and twisting in ways that didn't seem human. Like a serpent slipping through a crack, he avoided the blow in a way that seemed more like water than man. 3 moves. An smirked and pointed his index finger at her like a dart released from a bowstring. So fast. Yoruichi had no time to admire An's freakishly flexible dodges. She kicked off the ground in a flash, somersaulting away while planting her hands on the ground and twisting her waist with incredible control. Her movements were clean, practiced. Nearly acrobatic. But trying to run? An narrowed his eyes. He stomped the ground a dozen times in a single moment and disappeared into a black blur, chasing after her like a phantom. What the hell is that footwork? Yoruichi's mind reeled. Only the Shioi clan's flash steps technique could allow someone to move like this. Without using any spiritual pressure. That's how she fought just now. To prove her hand-to-hand combat's superiority, she used pure physical ability and didn't release a trace of spiritual pressure. But An? He was doing the same. And that terrified her more than anything. In a panic, she activated her family's secret technique. Passed down only through the Shioi bloodline. Still without using any spiritual pressure, she used a special breathing rhythm and body control to stomp out a strange pattern, vanishing into 4 directions at once. She split into 4 identical clones, each moving perfectly in sync. But An didn't look surprised. Of course, he knew the Shioi clan had secret footwork. They were one of the 4 great noble houses. They didn't rely on Zanpakuto. Their pride was built on hand-to-hand combats, flash steps, and hand-to-hand mastery. It made sense that they had unique techniques. Like the 4 maples. He only knew one of them from the original work, Utsuzumi. Empty cicada. As for the other 3, or even more hidden techniques. He didn't know. But it didn't matter. Because his hand-to-hand combats and flash steps were now pushing past even those ancient secrets. Chapter 44, Call Me Sensei. I'll teach you well then. Am I qualified to be your hand-to-hand combats instructor now? This is the secret footwork. Shioi clan technique, Mirage, one of the 4 maple steps. If you want to learn it, just call me sensei. And I'll teach you. A strange sight unfolded. The 4 identical Shioi Yoruichi all turned their heads in sync, speaking to Ayan in unison. This illusion-like technique, impossible to tell real from fake, was actually created through stealth and high-speed movement. Pure hand-to-hand combats and flash steps. No Kido. No Zanpakuto. No spiritual pressure. No wonder even the proud and aloof Byakuya Kuichiki couldn't resist learning Utsuzumi, one of the 4 maple steps, and used it multiple times as a life-saving technique. You tell me. Can you strike 4 targets at once? Ayan didn't move. He simply smiled and raised his right leg gently off the ground. Like a spinning top, he rotated and swept through the air with his foot. Whoosh! A sharp slicing sound tore through the air. A vacuum slash with 0 spiritual pressure flared out in an arc, shaped like a crescent moon, instantly cutting toward all 4 Yoruichis at once. What? Yoruichi arched her back just in time, letting the slash skim past her head. Her feet stomped the ground and she sprang upward, using the momentum of her bend to leap into the air and create distance. But mid-air. Something unexpected happened. A hand reached out from behind. 5 fingers, like steel claws, grabbed the back of her neck and lifted her up cleanly into the air. When? Yoruichi was stunned. She immediately twisted her body and flailed her limbs in resistance. But it was like a kitten caught by the scruff of her neck. Completely ineffective. Damn it. Realizing struggling was useless, she went still, annoyed, and turned her head to look behind her. What she saw made her freeze. Ayan stood behind her in midair, holding her by the nape with one hand. His feet weren't even pressing against solid ground. But somehow, he stood as if walking on air. You're walking in the air without using spiritual pressure? That's impossible. What kind of flash steps is that? And that vacuum slash earlier? And the way you dodge with those twisting body movements? None of it uses spiritual pressure. Where did you learn that kind of hand-to-hand combats? Yoruichi's expression showed disbelief. Shinigami can't fly. But by controlling and releasing their spiritual pressure, they can stay airborne. However, from beginning to end, Ayan hadn't used the slightest bit of spiritual pressure. Every action. Whether evading, attacking, or stepping through the air. Was performed purely through the manipulation of his physical spirit body. The rookie hand-to-hand combat style, Ayan said casually. It's called the Shinigami 6 styles. If you want to learn it, call me sensei. I'll teach you. Even the usually carefree and confident Yoruichi was fuming. She had just mocked him moments ago, offering herself as a tutor, and now the tables had completely turned. It was humiliating. But deep down, she was also intrigued. As the young head of the Shioi clan, Yoruichi had been training in elite-level hand-to-hand combats and flash steps since childhood. She had never encountered anything as clean and revolutionary as this. Ayan's self-made white hits style was different. It broke away from the rigid, formal methods taught in the spiritual arts academy and noble households. It was unlike anything the Soul Society had ever seen. Still, she had just mocked him with such confidence. And now? Not only had she failed to teach him anything, she was tempted to ask him for lessons instead. Ayan released her neck and let her drop gently to the ground. Finger gun, instant transmission, moonwalk, paper art, tempest kick, and iron body. 6 basic forms. That's the Shinigami 6 styles. He recited them calmly, not hiding anything. His voice was relaxed, almost playful. Yoruichi stood there, stunned. All of it had been invented. After reading a few textbooks from the academy? He had no teacher. He wasn't born into a noble house. But he had created something completely new, completely practical. And even more efficient than what the noble clans had passed down for centuries. Because of that, Ayan had no hesitation. Since Yoruichi had treated him well, both in warmth and care these past days, he didn't mind offering her this in return. Teaching her the Shinigami 6 styles was worth it. After all, this was no ordinary person. It was the future Flash goddess herself. Having her by his side, loyal and bonded early on, was a priceless gain. Just reading a hand-to-hand combats textbook and you create this? Are you even human? Yoruichi muttered under her breath. Zanpakuto, spiritual pressure, hand-to-hand combats, Kido, Kendo, flash steps. You're a genius in every single field. It's like the heavens are feeding you directly. Her thoughts swirled in chaos. She had originally come to teach him. And instead, she had been taught. And even more frustrating? She couldn't even pretend to be unimpressed. The Shinigami 6 styles were so clean, so fluid, so effective. It shook her to the core. Anne noticed her distracted expression and added playfully, "That's not to say your hand-to-hand combats is completely useless." Yoruichi's eyes lit up. "Right? You think so too? Let me show you the real Shioi techniques. These are all 4 forms of the Shioi secret steps. Watch closely. This is a fair exchange, not a free handout." Excited again, she dropped back into stance and ran through all the secret flash steps forms passed down through her family. Mirage. Otsuzumi. Phantom Step. Shadow Divide. From start to finish, no holding back. If Ayan had taught her the 6 styles, then she would share the entire Shioi 4 Maple technique set. That way, it wasn't charity. It was an exchange. In her eyes, that made it fair. Even. Balanced. The pride of the Shioi clan wouldn't allow her to take without giving. Ayan nodded with a slight smirk as she performed. Mirage to Otsuzumi. All 4 forms. Even the 13 Division of Imperial Guards would be surprised to see this. Now that both had shown their cards, only one question remained: who would master both styles first? Chapter 45, who would seriously remember an ant? After seeing what Shiyu Yoruichi had shown, Ayan didn't plan to learn it seriously, but he didn't mind watching and listening either. If someone was trying to teach him, then with his pride in his own hand-to-hand combats, he would absolutely reject it. After all, the reason he had requested leave and skipped Shiba Ishin's dedicated hand-to-hand combats class wasn't due to laziness but pride. He believed that he could create unmatched physical arts just through self-study. But if it was called an exchange, then that changed things. Besides, if Shiyu Yoruichi's self-esteem got too hurt, it would make it harder to make her his. So Ayan sat through it all, listening as Shiyu Yoruichi poured out everything. Foundational footwork, advanced flash steps, and all the hand-to-hand combats techniques passed down by the Shiyu family. Your hand-to-hand combats, after analyzing and reorganizing Shiyu Yoruichi's techniques, has successfully created Hand-to-Hand Combats Shinigami 6 Styles version 1.0. Suitable for both spirit bodies and spiritual pressure, Shinigami 6 Styles 1.0, Fist Spear, Razor, Swift Axe, Golden Body, Cloud Walk, Mirage, as expected. Hand-to-hand combats could not accept being taught by anyone. But if it was called a technique exchange, then it didn't count. Especially after Ayan's original 6 styles already beat Shiyu Yoruichi, hand-to-hand combats naturally took the new information and evolved it again on the spot into the refined and more complete Shinigami 6 Styles 1.0. Unlike the original version, which only used physical strength and could not be amplified with spiritual pressure, this new 1.0 version could be used by spirit bodies or enhanced with spiritual pressure, making the power several times stronger. After all, the techniques in the 4 pillars, sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kiddo, were all built around spiritual pressure as their core. While it's possible to use those moves without spiritual pressure, their strength would be greatly weakened. The same applied to Shiyu Yoruichi's hand-to-hand combats and flash steps. They relied heavily on spiritual pressure to unleash their full potential. In terms of creativity and development, hand-to-hand combats is definitely the most talented among sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kiddo. Seeing his hand-to-hand combats develop not 1, but 2 complete combat systems in a single day, Ayan couldn't help but sigh with pride. Though the 1.0 version was just an upgrade of the original 6 styles, the difference wasn't only in name or spiritual pressure compatibility. It was a total transformation from the inside out. For example, compare Cloud Walk and Moonwalk. The original Moonwalk used repeated air stepping to generate bursts of lift and stay in the air. But the 1.0 version of Cloud Walk used spiritual pressure as a foundation. Like walking on clouds. It allowed flight, gliding, and total air control. One was about rapid movement. The other true aerial combat. Totally different. Ayan, what's on your mind? Is it something in my Shiyu footwork or hand-to-hand combats that you didn't understand? Yoruichi tilted her head, confused by Ayan's sudden silence. No, Ayan replied casually. Didn't you say earlier that the only flaw in the original 6 styles is that it couldn't channel spiritual pressure to boost power? I was just figuring it out. And? A familiar, almost dreadful feeling rose in Yoruichi's chest. She already had a bad hunch. I listened to your explanation about Shiyu footwork and flash steps, Ayan said plainly, and I got inspired. So, I upgraded them. Created the new version, Shinigami 6 Styles 1.0. Start. Yoruichi gritted her teeth. After being around Ayan and witnessing his monstrous talent again and again, she didn't even need to question the truth of his words. In fact, the word she now feared most was created. Every time Ayan created something, It meant that everything she had just done was completely overshadowed. Again. Today, she felt like she'd handed her pride over to be crushed. She suddenly thought of Hiroko Shinji. And felt a strange sense of pity. She had only wanted to teach Ain hand-to-hand combats and got emotionally steamrolled in return. So what about Hiroko Shinji, who had foolishly agreed to fight Ain in public? Are you okay? Ain asked, noticing her dazed expression. I'm fine, Yaruichi muttered. I just couldn't help but think. Hiroko Shinji is really brave. Without a few hundred years of brain damage, I can't imagine anyone volunteering to fight someone like you. The pity in her beautiful golden eyes deepened. A month? Not even necessary. She realized that just 10 days at the Shino Academy would be enough for Ain to completely destroy Hiroko Shinji's confidence. Ain, for his part, didn't respond. He just smiled faintly. Hiroko Shinji? He had long forgotten that name. After all, who would seriously remember an ant? All that mattered was deciding that ant's fate when the time came. Time passed in the blink of an eye. A full month had passed since Ain had enrolled in the Shino Spiritual Arts Academy. After requesting leave from the hand-to-hand combats class. And after Shiyu and Yoruichi quietly informed Shiba Ishin about Ain's insane talent. Shiba had never called him to attend again. In fact, Shiba didn't just allow him to skip. He granted Ain over 20 days of free training, letting him cultivate on his own. Clearly, Shiba had made up his mind. Trying to train a once-in-a-millennium genius by dragging him through regular lessons would only slow him down. Sword art, Kido, flash steps. Each time Ain took a class, it was once. And never again. Shiba just let him take the reins after that. And then came today. The day Ain submitted his request for early graduation. Naturally, this drew attention. Not just from Shiba Ishin. But also from the upper-level instructors, lieutenants, and even a captain who had heard the rumors, Gotenbashi Jinjiro. Did he just apply for early graduation after 1 month? That's too fast. No one's ever done that in over 2,000 years. But the requirements for the first class are crazy high. You need elite-level mastery across multiple disciplines. Only 1 month of training. Can he really pass? I think he can. I heard he beat a Captain Imperial Guard in a single kendo class and nailed him to the wall of the dojo. Hiss. What? If that's true, then early graduation might actually make sense. Chapter 46, First Round, Kido. The Shino Academy had never seen such an uproar. All the lieutenants and senior officers present couldn't help whispering to their familiar colleagues, sharing the rumors they'd heard. A genius like this hasn't appeared in the Soul Society in 2,000 years. Mastered Zanpakuto without a sealed state, learned Shikai instantly. Memorized Kido from the Hado and Bakudo sections up to number 60 just by flipping through the Kido encyclopedia. Even defeated a Imperial Guard level captain in a kendo class. Though the stories weren't fully confirmed, just these bits of information were shocking enough. If any of it were true, then the student applying for early graduation today. Ain had already surpassed most of them in strength. Hey, look! Even a Captain Imperial Guard is here. That's Captain Anohana. And Captain Yukite too. Wait. That apostrophe S. Captain Yamamoto? Is this really a graduation assessment? Or a coronation ceremony for the next head captain? As the time of Ain's early graduation test approached, the pressure only intensified. Captain Anohana Yachiru arrived first, her expression calm but clearly interested. Then came Captain Joshiro Yukite and Captain Shun Sekiraku. But when Captain Commander Genri Uzai Shigakuni Yamamoto himself appeared, the entire academy practically held its breath. This wasn't just a normal assessment anymore. This was history in the making. Even Shiba Ishin, the one overseeing the exam, looked surprised by the captain's presence. Though only a few had arrived, each one carried immense weight. Take Anohana for example. To most ordinary Shinigami, she was just the captain of the 4th Division. The medical squad. But to those in the know, she was second only to Yamamoto himself in both strength and status. Kiraku and Yukite had been legends since their own student days, having become captains while still enrolled in the academy. And then, Yamamoto Genri Uzai. The strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years. The founder of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. The embodiment of justice and power. All of them had gathered to watch one student's graduation assessment. Shiba Ishin couldn't help but sigh. The pressure from above was unimaginable. Yet Yamamoto simply stepped forward and calmly said, "We're only here to observe, Captain Ishin. Proceed as you normally would." "Yes, sir." Shiba nodded solemnly and turned toward the candidate standing calmly among the crowd. "Candidate, Ain Sosuke. Step forward." Ain moved without hesitation. His Zanpakuto hung at his waist as he crossed the field to stand in the center of the spacious testing ground. An open grassy field about the size of several football stadiums. "Your application for early graduation has been approved, Shiba announced loudly. Since you're from a first class, and this is an early graduation request, the test will be more difficult than the standard graduation assessment. The categories include sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kido, spiritual pressure, and Zanpakuto mastery. As he spoke, several Kido Corps members escorted a restrained Jillian class Minnows Grand. Heavily bound in multiple layers of the Kudo. Into the testing area. First round, Kido. Use Kido under number 80 to defeat this Jillian. You must demonstrate both Bakudo and Hado. This was no paper exam. The Soul Society didn't want scholars, they wanted warriors. Even the Shino Academy's top class. The one known to produce future captains. Had to face real combat. What good was knowing how to chant Kido if you froze during battle? Ayan gave a calm nod. Understood. Release the seal, Shiba ordered. The Kido Corps Shinigami immediately removed the restraints from the Jillian. Roar. Like a beast let loose from its cage, the Minnows Grand roared wildly. Its spiritual pressure surged instantly, and scarlet light gathered rapidly in its jaws. Forming a Sero. Sero already? One of the spectators whispered in disbelief. Kido above number 80 requires full chanting unless you're a captain, another said. But Sero doesn't need a chant. It just condenses and fires. Takes less than a second. Can he even finish chanting in time? They weren't wrong. A Minnows Grand wasn't a test dummy. It attacked. It hunted. It killed. There was no courtesy or countdown, no chance to calmly perform incantations. In past tests, many excellent students had frozen up. Unable to cast even the spells they'd practiced for years. Jillian's Sero charged in less than 3 seconds. Its eyes locked onto Ayan. Closest, calmest, and standing alone. Boom. A blood-red Sero blasted forward, tearing through the air with deafening force. Bakudo number 81, Danku. Ayan murmured softly. He didn't even glance back. He just turned and casually walked away. A towering, translucent energy wall surged up between him and the oncoming Sero. Boom. The beam crashed into the Danku, shaking the sky with a thunderous blast. But the Kido barrier stood firm. Unbroken. Untouched. Didn't even flinch. The onlookers were stunned. But the Minnows didn't stop. With the little intelligence it had, it started forming another Sero. Ayan didn't turn around. Hado number 88, Dragon Strike Heaven Shaking Lightning Cannon. He said coolly. Before the Sero could even form, the ground cracked beneath Jillian's massive feet. A violent surge of spiritual pressure erupted. A brilliant blue glow burst upward like a rising dragon. Then boom. From beneath the Minnows Grand, a torrent of energy exploded, a beam of lightning and spiritual power shooting through its body like a volcano blowing from beneath. Jillian roared. It was swallowed whole by the storm. When the dust settled, there was no trace of the Minnows Grand. Only a smoldering crater, and the faint lingering scent of scorched hollow. Ayan slowly turned back, dusting off his sleeve, expression calm. Silence. No one spoke. Not even the captains. Because what could they say? One Bakudo. One Hado. Both among the highest of their kind. Both cast with no chant. Both executed faster than most lieutenants could even draw their Zanpakuto. The Kido test had just started. Yet it already felt like the finale. And yet. This was only round 1. Chapter 47, Ayan Sosuke. In Kido, he is already beyond me rumble. A thunderous explosion echoed in all directions. The sound shook the entire Shino Academy. In a flash, the terrifying beam of spiritual pressure vaporized the Minnows Grand and a Sero it had just finished charging. Both were broken down into pure spirit particles. The beam shot straight up, piercing the clouds over the academy and tearing open a massive hole in the sky. Like a divine pillar, it connected heaven and earth before finally fading away. Bakudo number 81, Danku. Hado number 88, Dragon Strike Heaven Shaking Lightning Cannon. Oh my god. He used Kido spells above number 80 without chanting. And the power is terrifying. Is this really a student who's only been at the academy for a month? Even some captains can't do that. The Shinigami watching from 13 Division of Imperial Guards were completely stunned. Joshiro, did you see that? Shun Sakuraku asked, his tone serious for once. Yukitake, equally shocked, nodded. I did. But there's more than what most saw. While regular seated officers and lieutenants were shocked by the fact that Ayan had cast high-level Kido without incantation, the captain saw something deeper. Not only did he skip the chant, Kiraku said, lowering the brim of his hat to hide his eyes, but he reshaped the structure of the Kido. Harajukuzaku Shinryo is already a spell that only captain-level Shinigami can use effectively without chanting, but this boy didn't just cast it. He changed the form entirely. Made it erupt from beneath the enemy like a volcanic blast. He paused. This isn't just raw power. It takes incredible knowledge of Kido theory and technique to modify the spell itself. Even Kiraku, with all his battle experience, couldn't do that. Normally, Kido has strict forms, whether cast with one hand, two hands, or aimed in a particular direction. But Ain had restructured everything. He cast a long-range Hado spell from beneath the opponent's feet, making it nearly impossible to dodge. This isn't something you can do just by having high spiritual pressure. It means he's already a true master of Kido. Kiraku let out a breath. Ain't so's. In Kido, at least, you're already beyond me. He was impressed before. Now, he was quietly in awe. Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni, watching nearby, opened his eyes slightly, a rare show of emotion from the legendary captain. In his thousands of years, he had seen countless so-called geniuses. But if he had to think of one who matched Ain, no one came to mind. Not one. As he admired Ain again, the old man recalled the night he first met the boy. I do regret it. Yes. Although his lieutenant Chojiro Sasaki had explained everything afterward, every time Yamamoto witnessed Ain's talent, a small part of him felt regret. No wonder he doesn't care about the title of Kenpachi. If he's this good at Kido, it's no surprise he treats Kendo mastery as just another stepping stone. Anohana Yachiru was similarly astonished. She finally understood why the title of Kenpachi, longed for by so many, seemed meaningless to Ain. Because he had already surpassed the title itself. Captain Ishin, do I pass the first assessment now? Ain asked casually, walking back over. Shiba Ishin, still frozen in shock, blinked. You're joking, right? He said, forcing a laugh and shaking his head. He had only asked Ain to use Kido below number 80. Instead, the kid ignored the instruction, cast above number 80, without chanting, and still had more power than many captains. Even Ishin wasn't sure he could outperform what he'd just seen. And thinking about that hurt his pride. He was the head of the Shiba family's branch house, a veteran Shinigami who had trained his entire life. Yet this boy, after only 1 month in the academy, was already ahead of him. It made Ishin feel like everything he'd worked for had been for nothing. Lucky me. He sighed. At least we used a Minnows grant for the exam instead of a regular Kido dummy. Otherwise I'd be the one paying for the academy's repairs. He muttered quietly, thankful that the early graduation test had more difficult criteria. Otherwise Ain might have blown up the entire Kido hall. Alright. Next round. Sword dart assessment. Same rules as before. Defeat the Minnows Grand using only swordsmanship. As the Kido Corps brought out another restrain Minnows, Ishin announced the second part of the test. Why are you still standing here? He noticed Ain hadn't moved from his side. No need to walk over, Ain replied calmly. At that moment, the Kido restraints were removed from the new Minnows. Ain slowly raised one palm to the sky. Clang. A high-pitched sound echoed like 1,000 blades being drawn at once. Suddenly, a suffocating sword pressure swept over the crowd. Everyone present felt like their skin was being cut by blades, and their hair stood on end. Then, shink, shink, shink. 8 glowing swords of spiritual energy rained down from the sky, piercing through the Minnow's head, chest, legs, and other vital points, pinning the monster to the ground before it could even charge up a Sero. It's the same technique from when he fought Hirako Shinji, Ishin murmured, eyes narrowing. Though he hadn't witnessed the match himself, he'd heard the story from Shiba Keian. That duel wasn't really a duel. It was a one-sided defeat. Hirako had been skewered to the wall of the Kendo Hall with just 3 of these blades. But now, there were 8. More refined. More powerful. More precise. Compared to 2 weeks ago, his sword technique has already evolved again. Anohana Yachiru's sharp instincts picked up on the change immediately. She had once faced this move herself and lost. But now, she could tell Ain's control over the technique had become even stronger. He's growing again, she whispered. Even I can't beat him now. Joshiro. Yamamoto Genryu's eye turned toward Yukitake. You were right. Even if I personally taught him, there's nothing more I could offer. In just 1 month. Ain Sosuke's mastery of Kido and Kendo had already surpassed the level of most seated captains. Even among captains, there were very few who could teach him anything anymore. Chapter 48, To Die Under My Zanpato's Shikai. Isn't that an honor, Captain Ishin? Is it the same for flash steps, hand-to-hand combats, and Kendo? Ain slowly lowered his palm, causing the 8 spiritual pressure swords that had pinned the Minnows Grand to the ground to vanish into particles of light. Then he turned and asked Ishin Shiba calmly. Ishin opened his mouth but said nothing. What could he say? At this point, any sort of test felt pointless. Judging by Ain's current strength, not only had he surpassed any need for a graduation assessment. He was already at a level fit to be a 13th Division of Imperial Guards captain. Wait. That's exactly what's next for him. Once this graduation was official, Ain would step up as the captain of the 5th Division. As for Hiroko Shinji, his disagreement wouldn't last. Ishin was sure the man would step aside soon enough. No assessment needed. You pass. Except. His sentence was interrupted by the tap of a cane. Except for the Zanpakuto. The deep voice of Genryu's Ishigakuni Yamamoto echoed through the grounds as he brought down his staff lightly. Instantly, all eyes turned to the Supreme Commander. Your Kido mastery surpasses even high-level incantations. Your swordsmanship rivals the legacy of the original Kenpachi. Flash steps and hand-to-hand combats. There's no need to test them. I believe you've already surpassed even veteran captains in those fields. But this is tradition. To become a 13 Division of Imperial Guards captain, one must show that they've achieved Zanpakuto release. The gathered captains, lieutenants, and high-ranking officers all nodded in silent agreement. No one objected. It was standard procedure. Yes, Captain Commander, Ishin replied, then turned back to Ain. Several Kido Corps members left and returned shortly, bringing with them two things: 1, a blue-haired Shinigami with a tall figure and a calm demeanor, Hoshigaki Nanzo, Vice Chief of the Kido Corps. And 2, an Ajusha's class Menos Grand, bound in powerful Bakudo restraints. This is your final test, Ishin said. These Ajushas invaded the Soul Society recently. He's your target. Normally, this would be a brutal exam. Only lieutenant-level Shinigami are cleared to face enemies of this class. But for you. He gave a helpless smile. This is just going through the motions. A formality. The real goal is to prove that you've unlocked your Shikai. Ishin glanced at the crowd. Most of the Siriitei's high-level officers were present. If you'd rather keep your Zanpakuto's power hidden, I can clear the field and leave only the captains behind. They'll need to stay. Proof of Shikai mastery must be shown to at least 2 captains Imperial Guard to be official. That's the rule. He leaned closer and lowered his voice. Don't worry. Most captains already know each other's Shikai. Whether that knowledge is real or faked. Well, you get the idea. Ain smiled faintly. No need to clear the field, he said calmly. He had no intention of hiding anything. After all, his Zanpakuto Kofuin didn't just have one ability. Its Shikai alone had multiple forms, and none of them were simple. Not to mention, even if someone knew what Kofuin could do, they couldn't necessarily counter it. Some Zanpakuto were just like that. Powerful and terrifying, impossible to resist even when fully understood. Kofuin was one of them. I'm ready, Ain said. As if on cue, Nanzo waved his palm, releasing the Bakudo bindings. A sharp, twisted voice filled the air. You damn Shinigami. I'll make you pay for this disgrace. The Ajusha snarled as he stepped forward, spiritual pressure flaring wildly. You dare mock me. Copper. Like this? Most Ajusha's class minnows were intelligent and emotional, and Copper was no exception. He had listened to everything said before the fight. He understood he was just here to be a demonstration piece. And that enraged him. A surge of dark energy exploded from him, flooding the courtyard and drawing gasps from many Shinigami. Even some lieutenants looked uneasy. But then, a voice, calm and steady, entered his ear. You should be more careful. You're the one underestimating me. Suddenly, a wave of spiritual pressure far stronger than his own descended. Ain's spiritual pressure crashed down like a collapsing mountain, shattering Copper's aura in an instant and replacing it with a suffocating force. Crack. The sound of breaking bones echoed through the air. It came from Copper. Pack. The hollow's knees hit the ground. The entire battlefield went silent. The fearsome Ajushas. Just moments ago radiating raw power. Was now trembling, pale-faced, sweating, kneeling. The gathered Shinigami could hardly believe what they were seeing. He crushed an Ajushas. With spiritual pressure alone? That's impossible. No wonder they call him the greatest genius in the past 2,000 years. He's on a different level than us. Even among the lieutenants, whispers and disbelief ran rampant. Meanwhile, Ain calmly walked toward Copper. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Copper, sensing his approach, trembled harder. His body shook uncontrollably, like a man sentenced to death. Ain lowered himself slightly. No need to be afraid, he said softly. To die under my Zanpakuto's Shikai. Isn't that an honor? Then he placed a finger on Copper's forehead. Close your eyes. Kofuon. A black mist curled upward from his fingertip. It spun slowly in a tight spiral, forming a small but terrifying black vortex. A darkness so dense that even light could not escape. The nearby air twisted and shimmered. Even space itself bent. What followed was silence. And then. Chi. A horrifying, wet grinding noise filled the air. The sound of matter being shredded, bones collapsing, flesh crushed. The black vortex expanded slightly and devoured Copper, from head to toe, inch by inch. There was no struggle. No chance to resist. The Ajusha's famed hero, known to block even Zanpakuto's slashes, was meaningless. In the face of this gravity-based shike, copper was erased from existence, piece by piece. Until nothing was left. Only the sound of wind. Only silence. Chapter 49, Ryujin Jakka. So even you feel threatened? After a short while, Ayan dispelled the dark spiral vortex and withdrew his finger from where it had touched the Ajush's brow. The warped space smoothed itself out, and the distorted light that had been pulled into the darkness was restored, flowing freely once again. Everything returned to normal. As if nothing had ever happened. Only the Ajush's Minnows Grand was gone, completely erased from existence. There weren't even shattered limbs left behind. No traces of spiritual particles, not even a speck of dust. Just like matter swallowed by a black hole, crushed by an unfathomable gravity. Not only could it not be recovered, but it couldn't even leave behind a trace of its presence. Light when the eyes are open. Darkness when they are closed. Two sides of the same blade. Both are ultimate forms. This is the Zanpakuto that merges the strongest of the light element and the strongest of the dark element. This is Ayan's Kafuon. This is Ayan's Zanpakuto Shikai. Is that an elemental Zanpakuto? Looks like a dark type. The swirling darkness is terrifying. Just looking at it makes my heart feel heavy. That blade is no joke. That's the Zanpakuto of the most talented student the Shino Academy has seen in over 2,000 years. You think it would be ordinary? All the present Shinigami stared in awe. Even though Ayan had only shown a small glimpse of Kafuon's dark ability, the brief exposure to that dense, oppressive darkness was enough to leave the observers shaken. Even Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni, wielder of the most powerful fire-type Zanpakuto, couldn't stay calm. Ryujin Jakka. Are you telling me about that blade? So even you feel threatened? At first, Yamamoto Genryu's eye only cast a glance toward Ayan's blade. After all, he had seen countless Zanpakuto during his millennia of service. Some had strange abilities. Some were extraordinarily powerful. A few, like his own Ryujin Jakka, held the title of being the strongest within a certain type. But when Ryujin Jakka itself began to warn him, whispering its unease about Kafuon, his expression changed. Shock. Caution. Even fear. Who was Ryujin Jakka? It wasn't just the oldest Zanpakuto in Soul Society. It held the title of the strongest offense-type Zanpakuto, a manifestation of fire itself, blazing like the sun. And yet, this very Zanpakuto now trembled before Kafuon. How could Yamamoto Genryu's eye not take it seriously? Captain Ishin, Ayan said casually, sheathing his Zanpakuto as he walked back. Does this count as passing? Shiba Ishin stared at the sealed Zanpakuto at Ayan's waist. Though he didn't hear Ryujin Jakka's warning like Yamamoto did, his instincts were sharp. That Zanpakuto was dangerous. Mystifying. The result is clear. Ayan Sosuke. You've passed the graduation exam. Early graduation? Approved. As Shiba officially announced the result, a faculty member stepped forward and respectfully offered a fresh Shiakusho. The black uniform worn by the official Shinigami. From now on, you are a full-fledged Shinigami. You can wait for the first division to assign you a position. Or, you may personally submit an application to any of the 13 Division of Imperial Guard squads. Although I know your heart likely lies elsewhere, I'll still ask. Would you consider joining my 10th Division? Shiba gave one last heartfelt invitation. But before Ayan could even open his mouth to reply, a deep voice cut through the air. Captain Ishin, I do not approve of your invitation. Yamamoto Genryu's eye stepped forward, his voice firm and unquestionable. The head captain himself had spoken. Ayan Sosuke. Would you consider joining my first division, as its lieutenant? In an instant, everyone present was stunned. Graduating and immediately becoming a lieutenant? It had happened in Soul Society's long history. But never for someone who joined the first division. The head captain's own squad. Normally, lieutenants served directly under their captains and held status just beneath them. But the first division was different. The first division had 2 lieutenants, and even their authority rivaled some captains from other squads. Should you accept, I will personally train you daily, Yamamoto added, calmly dropping a bombshell. Even the other captains were left wide-eyed. Only Joshiro Yukitake, who knew Yamamoto had long hoped to take a disciple, managed to stay composed. But the others were shocked. It wasn't just the position that was tempting. It was the daily instruction from Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni himself. A privilege so rare that even nobles would bow their heads for it. Thank you for your kindness, Captain. Unfortunately, I must decline. Ayan's answer struck the room like a lightning bolt. He had refused. Refused the head captain's personal invitation. Refused the position of 1st Division's lieutenant. Refused Yamamoto's mentorship. Shock rippled through the room once again. Why? Yamamoto asked, genuinely surprised. He had never been refused before. Not in over 1,000 years. Was it because his power wasn't enough? Or was the lieutenant's seat not worthy of Ain? If you'd asked me a few weeks ago, I'd have agreed without hesitation. But now, I have a fight that I can't avoid. I hope you understand, Captain. Ain's voice was calm and respectful, but also firm. Yamamoto could see he had thought this through well in advance. A premeditated refusal. Hiroko Shinji would serve as a convenient shield later. That was part of the plan. Because unlike other squads, where the captain had full control, the 1st Division's decisions ultimately lay in Yamamoto's hands. And Ain. Brilliant and ruthless. Understood that he needed independence, not oversight. Yamamoto's conservative and rigid ways didn't suit him. Aizen would be a better fit. A fight? An appointment? What do you mean? Yamamoto's brows furrowed slightly. He remembered that he had once assigned surveillance to the Ain brothers. But ever since Aizen perfected his polite, unambitious persona. Thanks to the trickery of Kyoka Suigetsu. Yamamoto had let his guard down. He had even felt admiration for Aizen's humility and intellect. A man like that. How could he ever threaten Soul Society? Chapter 50, but what about tomorrow? Next month? A year later? Captain, here's what happened. Shiba Ishin stepped forward, observing that Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni's expression wasn't feigned. He began to explain everything in detail, how Hiroko Shinji had sent his lieutenant ahead as a distraction, then arrived at the sword art dojo pretending to be a teacher, only to continually pressure Aizen. In the end, it was Ain, acting as the elder brother, who defended Aizen and pinned Hiroko to the wall with a single strike. Presumptuous. The more Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni heard, the darker his expression became. Especially when Shiba mentioned how, even after losing, Hiroko still intended to abuse his authority as 5th Division captain to keep pressing the Ain brothers. Going so far as to challenge them to a duel. Yamamoto could no longer contain his fury. Boom. The spiritual pressure of the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years erupted without restraint. A wave of spiritual pressure burst out like a tidal surge, instantly crushing all seated officers to their knees. Even lieutenant-level Shinigami could barely stay conscious, collapsing one by one as though caught in a sea of flames, their bodies feeling like they were burning alive. A captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, entrusted with leadership, should nurture talent. But instead, he uses his authority to suppress people of integrity and promise. Is that what Siriite AI gave him his rank for? So he could do as he pleases? Utter nonsense. Yamamoto's voice thundered with fury, his spiritual pressure thickening the air like a storm of fire. He had long regretted missing the chance to take Ain under his wing during the boy's time at the Shino Academy. But now, learning that not only did he miss his opportunity, but that Hiroko Shinji. Another captain point had repeatedly harassed them without cause, Yamamoto's anger erupted like an inferno. It was a direct insult to his authority, especially if word spread. It would mean one of his own captains had openly acted with bias and selfishness right under his nose. Hiroko might have just misunderstood. Joshiro Yukitake, ever the voice of reason, tried to mediate. But Yamamoto, mid-rage, cut him off harshly. Misunderstood what? Is it a crime now to accomplish what he could not? To give without asking anything in return? To act with clarity and honor? Just because he, Hiroko Shinji, is narrow-minded, must he drag others down? He refused to step forward for Soul Society's future. That's fine. Not everyone can be a hero. But to repeatedly suppress someone like Aizen, using the power of a captain? Yamamoto's spiritual pressure grew heavier, hotter, and almost took visible form. This spiritual pressure. It's already reached the level of 60 Kinsai. No Shikei, no Bankai. And yet standing above most Shinigami. Ain, standing tall beneath the pressure, stared forward. His eyes, behind square-framed glasses, reflected a faint glimmer of admiration and curiosity. Yamamoto's spiritual pressure wasn't like other captains. It wasn't just overwhelmingly powerful. It was hot, blazing like a wildfire. It carried the essence of Rijinjaka itself. Clearly, his thousands of years of cultivation didn't just grant Yamamoto unparalleled power. They let him merge his Zanpakuto's nature directly into his spiritual pressure. It wasn't just energy. It was on fire. Ain's eyes flickered. That idea. That ability. Was something he had never considered before. Your Zanpakuto says, you still need to learn how to integrate Zanpakuto traits into spiritual pressure? Humphrey. She's been too busy preparing for Bankai lately, but since you're interested, she'll spare 30 seconds to infuse her power into your spiritual pressure. The moment the message reached his mind, Ain's spiritual pressure subtly changed. The rank didn't rise. It remained on level 18 spiritual pressure. Still triple that of Muguruma Kinsai even in a sealed state. But the quality changed. His spiritual pressure now bore the essence of Zanpakuto Kafu and light and darkness. What those effects were, he'd need to test in battle. Ain. You don't need to attend this duel. As for Hiroko Shinji, Leave him to me. I guarantee he won't threaten Aizen again. Yamamoto, still burning with fury, turned toward Daen and offered assurance. Thank you, Captain, for your concern. But I must attend. Aen shook his head firmly. There was no chance he would skip this battle. It was all part of the plan he and Aizen had crafted long ago. To drag Hierako out of the 5th Division through force. And as for the lieutenant seat of the 1st Division. He had no intention of taking it himself. That seat was reserved for Aizen. You don't trust me? Yamamoto frowned, tone low and dangerous. In all of Seoul's society, his authority was unmatched. Even Central 46 could not override his personal decisions. He was the law of Siriite AI. He only obeyed Central 46's rulings out of respect. For he, Yamamoto Genryuzai, had created that order. If he didn't follow it, who would? I ask respectfully, Captain. What will you do about Captain Hierako? Remove him from the 5th Division? Expel him from the 13th Division of Imperial Guards? Aen's voice was calm but direct. Yamamoto fell silent. After all, Hierako Shinji was a division captain. That rank was more prestigious than most noble clan heads. You couldn't just strip him of that rank or cast him out of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards on a whim. More importantly, Hierako hadn't technically broken any laws. Morally, yes. But legally, no. It was clever, really. No matter how much trouble he caused, there would never be a real punishment. At most, a slap on the wrist. A verbal warning. Maybe a written reprimand. Aen understood it clearly. Even in the court guard, it was still about internal politics. No one would kill a fellow captain over something like this. Captain, it's not you I don't trust. It's Hierako. You might scare him into behaving. For now. But what about tomorrow? Next month? A year later? As you yourself said. He's narrow-minded. If you punish him today, he'll only hate Aizen more tomorrow. And next time, he'll strike from the shadows. There's a saying in the human world. A thief only needs to get lucky once, the victim must be cautious every single time. With that, Aen accepted the new uniform and turned toward the 5th Division. He was already moving forward. The game had begun. Chapter 51, This will be the last time I call you that. Staring at Aen's retreating back. At that moment, in the eyes of every Shinigami present, Aen's image took on a new weight. He was no longer just the one centimillennium genius of the Shino Academy. Now, he stood tall as an older brother. Someone who would go against the authority of the captain commander himself, someone willing to graduate early just to protect his younger brother by facing off against a 13th Division of Imperial Guards captain. This wasn't just raw talent anymore. It was character, spirit, and conviction. In that instant, Aen's figure became larger than life. Comparable even to Aizen, that famously humble and elegant genius. But Aizen was like a distant star. Unreachable and refined. Aen, on the other hand, was grounded. He bled for his brother. He stood tall for his beliefs. That made him real. Just like how Shun Sakurako once had an older brother. What a mess. I never thought I'd see the day when a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards would act like a petty thief. Hierako Shinji really made a fool of himself. Kiraku shook his head with a bitter smile. Yamamoto Genryuzai Shigakuni, standing silently, finally opened his mouth. Shunsei, what do you think? Even he, the captain commander who had ruled over the 13th Division of Imperial Guards for over 1,000 years, found this situation difficult. On one hand, there was Hierako Shinji. An established captain, with deep connections and seniority. On the other, the Ain brothers. Peerless talents of the Shino Academy, and a duo whose popularity in Siriite AI had already surpassed expectations. Even for Yamamoto, this was not easy to settle. Let them resolve this themselves, old man. Kiraku answered simply. No matter how this duel ends, the 5th Division will still have a captain. His words sounded impartial, but the intent was clear. He was already leaning toward Aen. After seeing Aen's strength with his own eyes, Kiraku knew he would not lose. Captain Ishin, you were there too. What's your view? Yamamoto turned toward Shiba Ishin. It's true that Captain Hierako didn't act properly, Ishin said without hesitation. Aen backed off again and again, gave him chances, and tried to avoid conflict. He only accepted this duel because he was forced to. Because Captain Hierako left him no choice. If Kiraku was subtle in his support, Ishin was direct. In front of the captain commander and several top-ranking captains, he made his position clear. He disapproved of Hierako's actions entirely. What about you, Captain Anohana? Yamamoto finally turned toward the quiet figure of Anohana Retsu. Anohana opened her eyes gently, her expression calm as ever. I'm the captain of the 4th Division, she said softly. My concern is with healing and emergency response. My only promise is this, I'll ensure this duel sees blood, but not death. Her words were gentle, but chilling. Thank you. Yamamoto's voice lowered. That settled it. If the fight wouldn't result in death, then whether Aon or Hiroko Shinji ended up as the 5th Division's captain wouldn't weaken the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. And to be honest, Yamamoto was already dissatisfied with Hiroko. He had tried and failed to recruit the Aon brothers into his personal guard. But not only did Hiroko fail to recognize their value, he even threatened and suppressed them. Captain Commander, I still have urgent matters to attend to at the squad barracks. Shiba Ishin bowed and excused himself. He wasn't lying. Aon had already headed to the 5th Division's barracks, and Ishin had promised to bring 200 Shinigami along to support him. He wasn't about to let Hiroko twist the narrative with tricks. And sure enough, back at the 5th Division's barracks, Hiroko Shinji was already clearing the area. He ordered all officers and members to evacuate the dormitory, leaving only his lieutenant, Sarugaki Hori, behind. Idiot. What are you doing? Are you that afraid of losing to a guy who's only been a Shinigami for a month? You're not even brave enough to fight him in front of your own division? Hori scowled at him. She had been at the Kendo Hall herself when things exploded weeks ago. She had seen what happened. She had also personally investigated Aon's time at Shino Academy. What did she find? Aon was universally respected. Humble, polite, noble. Aon, meanwhile, was courageous and protective. He had openly challenged authority for the sake of his brother. Compared to that, Hiroko's actions had been small and petty. From the threat at the dojo to this underhanded evacuation. It disgusted her. Afraid? Hiroko chuckled bitterly. No, Hori. I just want him to understand the gap between us. The distance between a mere genius and a real captain. Then, without waiting for her reply, he stood up and began walking. Let's go. The so-called strongest genius of the millennium is here. We shouldn't keep him waiting, right? Or else he'll say we don't know how to treat our guests. He didn't look back. TCH. Hori sighed and followed. What else could she do? This was her captain. Whether she liked it or not. And just as they stepped out the doors of the 5th Division barracks, Aon arrived. His posture was relaxed. His black shayakusho fluttered gently with each step. His eyes were calm. Forgive me. I've been busy, so I didn't have time to prepare a welcome ceremony. It's just me and the lieutenant here. Hope you don't mind. Hiroko smiled with mocking politeness. Why would I mind? Aon smiled back. His eyes swept across the empty courtyard. Large, silent, and utterly void of people. He understood immediately. So this is your last little trick? Aon looked at him calmly. How disappointing. I actually wanted to let you walk away with dignity. Student Aon, I'm afraid I don't understand what you're talking about, Hiroko replied, tapping his forehead in mock confusion. Oh, my bad. You're not a student anymore, are you? You're officially a Shinigami now. So when you talk to a Captain Imperial Guard, you should show some respect. He grinned. Captain Hiroko. This will be the last time I call you that. After today, you'll have nothing to do with the 5th Division. Aon's voice was soft, but icy. Such bold words, Hiroko scoffed. Save them until after you manage to gather 200 Shinigami to your side. Aon just laughed. So you really don't plan on backing out with dignity? Fine, then. If you want to lose disgracefully, I'll be happy to help. He turned slightly, his eyes calm. Hiroko Shinji didn't realize that the person he was mocking was not only confident but completely certain of his victory. And behind that certainty was a strategist greater than even himself. All his schemes, all his tricks, in front of Aon and Aizen, were child's play. Chapter 52, even more dangerous than Aizen. Just as Hiroko Shinji was about to reply, he suddenly sensed something. And the smile on his face froze. Pada. 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 Footsteps echoed from the distance. From faint to heavy, they grew louder, drawing everyone's attention. One after another, rows of Shinigami in standard black uniforms appeared from different streets surrounding the 5th Division barracks. When the footsteps finally halted, over 200 Shinigami stood behind Aon in orderly lines. And facing them. More than 600 Shinigami of the 5th Division. What made Hiroko Shinji's expression twist even more was the appearance of 3 familiar figures, all wearing either short-sleeved or long-sleeved captain's hori. 1 woman. 2 men. Captain Anohana. Captain Ishin. Lieutenant Sasaki. His eyes darkened as he stared at each of them, especially at Retsu Anohana. His heart sank. The presence of the first Kinpachi turned from a safety net into a looming threat. He had thought she might help restrain Aon. Never imagining that she would show up on the opposite side. I heard there would be a captain-level duel, Anohana said calmly. As the captain of the 4th Division, it's my duty to ensure medical readiness and prevent unnecessary deaths. Don't you think so, Captain Hiroko? Retsu Anohana. Known in secret as Yachiru. Anohana, the first Kinpachi and the most dangerous combatant in the Soul Society. Spoke with serene authority. To her, Hiriko's protests were nothing more than noise. And you, Lieutenant Sasaki? Hiriko turned quickly, seeking support. What would the head captain say if he saw this? Sasaki Chojiro remained composed. The head captain sent me. Just that single sentence made Hiriko Shinji feel his foot collapse beneath him. And if I remember right, wouldn't this drag the Shiba clan even further down? He said, turning to Shiba Ishin, trying to use his status against him. But Ishin only smiled faintly and replied in kind, funny. I remember you saying something just like that to me half a month ago in the Kendo Hall. I'll take it back. I didn't misjudge Aizen. But I clearly misjudged you. Hiriko turned slowly to Ayan, his expression unreadable. Somewhere between stunned and uneasy. Now it was all clear. The reason these captains and lieutenants appeared with troops. The timing, the planning, the manipulation. It was all Ayan's doing. You. Ayan Sosuke. You're a dangerous man. Even more dangerous than Aizen. His voice trembled slightly. Before, he couldn't understand Ayan. Was he a naive older brother? A political pawn? Or something deeper? Now he knew. Ayan was no mere protector. He was a calculating mind, a master of influence. A hidden threat. Is that what you wanted to say in your final hours as the 5th Division captain? Ayan replied softly, the cold smile never leaving his face. So what if Hiriko called him dangerous? Was Anohana not dangerous? Didn't Sasaki swear loyalty to the captain of a merciless strike force? Even Ishin, whose carefree manner masked a powerful resolve, had chosen his side. As for Ayan, everyone knew he was a good brother. Don't talk like the battle is over already, Hiriko snapped. You're not the captain commander yet. As of now, we stand on equal ground. Who wins isn't decided until the very end. Despite his earlier panic, Hiriko quickly regained his calm. He wasn't a new recruit. He'd survived centuries, battles, betrayals, and even Aizen. His pride as a captain wouldn't let him crumble so easily. Then let our Zanpakuto speak, Ayan said, eyes flashing coldly behind his dark-rimmed glasses. So Hiriko still clung to that illusion? That they were equals? That Aizen or Ayan was simply some genius on the rise? No. To Ayan, they were stepping stones. Puppets in a long game. Tools to shape the 5th Division into his kingdom. And later. To begin the hollowification experiments. As you wish, Hiriko said, brushing his blonde hair aside and standing tall. He had no illusions anymore. The authorities couldn't suppress Ayan now. Only his Zanpakuto could determine this. Captain Ishin, Anohana spoke softly, her tone formal. If you would create a Kido barrier to contain the battlefield. Understood, Ishin replied. Everyone present knew what captain-class combat meant. Even a careless bloke can level half a squad barracks. And here, both fighters were guaranteed to release their Zanpakuto. Bakudo number 81, Danku. As Ishin pressed his palms to the ground, a brilliant orange cube of energy rose and enclosed the battlefield, isolating Ayan and Hiriko Shinji inside. The instant the barrier settled, Hiriko acted first. He already knew Ayan's terrifying swordsmanship. He'd experienced it firsthand at the Kendo Hall. This time, he wouldn't allow Ayan to control the fight with close combat. Collapse. Sukanod. As the release command rang out, Hiriko's Zanpakuto shimmered and transformed. The handle became hollow with a circular loop, the blade itself forming 5 tiny holes along its surface. At the same time, a strange aroma filled the air. Sweet, almost intoxicating. It spread rapidly, swallowing the entire interior of the barrier. Clang. Ayan reached out calmly to draw his Zanpakuto. But noticed something strange. His arm, which should have moved downwards, turned upwards instead. Huh? Welcome to the world of inverted senses, Ayan Sosuke. Hiriko's smirk returned. My Shikai ability. Sukanod. Reverses your perception of up and down, left and right, front and back. It twists your vision, your balance, even your sense of direction. You'll see yourself slashing left but actually strike right. You'll try to dodge back but walk straight into danger. He spun his Zanpakuto lazily in one hand, watching Ayan's reaction. But you already noticed that, didn't you? Instead of panic, Ayan showed only mild surprise. His face returned to a calm, icy focus almost immediately. Like he'd already predicted this outcome. Not going to move? Smart. You're trying to figure it out first, Hiriko said, circling him slowly. But it's pointless. In this reversed world, you're the only one affected. Your brilliant swordsmanship means nothing now. And my attacks? Even a sloppy one will be your nightmare. He raised his blade and pointed it forward. Like this. Chapter 53, The truth is so terrifying that your mind rejects it. Seeing that Ayan was affected by Sukanod's ability, Hiriko Shinji believed he had the upper hand. Ayan didn't even try to draw his Zanpakuto. He stood still, cautious and unmoving. PFFT. With the sound of a blade slicing through flesh, Hirako Shinji had already closed the distance. His Zanpakuto had pierced through Ayan's abdomen and out the back of his spine in one fluid motion. Just as Hirako had said earlier. When Ayan was under the influence of Sukanod, even a careless swing became a nightmare. Understand now, Ayan Sosuke. This is the price for overestimating your strength. And for underestimating a Captain Imperial Guard. Shinji leaned closer, whispering those words coldly near Ayan's ear. But he thought the battle was decided. His strike had landed perfectly. However, outside the Keto barrier, the expressions of Anohana Retsu, Shiba Ishin, and Chojiro Sasaki had grown strange. There was no alarm. Just amusement, pity, even a hint of mockery in their eyes. You idiot. You're not even holding a sword. Sarugaki Hori's voice rang out clearly from outside the barrier, snapping Shinji out of his moment of triumph. He quickly leapt back and looked down at his own hand. Just like Hori said, the blade that had pierced Ayan's abdomen wasn't stained with blood. Instead, it was covered in a strange black mist, leaking from the wound. What? Is this your shike, Captain Hirako? I thought it was impressive at first. But in the end, it's just a child's trick. Despite being stabbed, Ayan was smiling. Not in pain, but amused. He calmly reached out toward Shinji's wrist, seemingly to grab it. But under Sukanod's inversion effect, up became down, and forward became backward. So instead of grabbing, his movement turned into an awkward elbow strike in the opposite direction. Don't forget, you're still inside my inverted world, Shinji said smugly. For someone like you. Who relies on instinctive combat. The more skilled you are, the more you'll suffer under Sukanod. Even simple actions like dodging, blocking, or attacking. Your instincts will betray you. You'll have to consciously think through every movement. And no one can survive a battle like that. Shinji chuckled, maintaining distance while taunting Ayan. It's almost sad. All it takes is one basic attack to deal with you now. Look. Like this. But before he could continue, Ayan calmly pulled his hand back. His right palm now faced forward, fingers spread wide. Kuroamizu, dark water. Ayan's hand turned into a swirling black vortex. An enormous gravitational force erupted outward, distorting the air around them. Even the barrier that Captain Shiba had set up warped violently under the pressure. And Hirako Shinji, caught in its pull, could barely react. What? It felt like he was being dragged into a black hole. The force was absolute, unstoppable. Flash steps? Useless. Hado or Bakudo? No time. Hand-to-hand combats? Impossible. Even moving a finger required a massive effort of spiritual pressure and strength. He was completely immobilized. His only choice was to stop resisting. He was pulled toward Ayan's palm. Completely defenseless. But I still have a chance, Shinji told himself. In this reversed world, he is inverted too. Even his attacks are reversed. If I time it right, when he hesitates for even a moment, I can counter. That was his last thought. Before he was dragged right up to Ayan's outstretched hand. And then, what? Fear overtook him. He suddenly realized something terrifying. Where's my shikai? My Sukanod. It's gone. What? Is it sealed? Shinji's eyes darted down to the Zanpakuto in his own hand. The curved blade and circular guard of Sukanod had vanished. What remained was just an ordinary, unawakened Zanpakuto. Unbelievably, Shinji looked up at Ayan in shock. Did you seal my shikai? Ayan, still gripping him with one hand, looked down from above and smiled. It seems you've finally noticed. Indeed. I know how to do shikai as well. Your eyes are finally correct, Hirako Teicho. If you survive this, remember this feeling. Whenever you look at me in the future. Use this gaze. Without another word, Ayan drew his blade with his other hand and, just like Shinji had done before, drove it straight into the captain's abdomen. PFT. With one smooth thrust, the blade exited through Shinji's back. He gasped, blood pouring from both his stomach and mouth. You. What did you do to me? Why did my Sukanod cancel on its own? I didn't release it. I didn't. Why? Shinji's voice was shaking, pale and confused. But Ayan only responded coolly. With your intelligence, I didn't expect you to ask such a basic question. Or maybe the truth is so terrifying that your mind rejects it? You already know the answer. You just don't want to believe it. Ayan's tone sharpened as he tightened his grip. As you suspected, I sealed your shikai. Completely. Just like you were back when you first received your Zanpakuto. Shinji's eyes widened in horror. Outside the barrier, the faces of Anohana, Ishin, Sasaki. And over 600 other Shinigami. Shifted. Stunned silence followed. That's because sealing a Shinigami's shikai is unthinkable. The Zanpakuto is the very soul of a Shinigami. To force it back into a sealed state. Against the user's will. Was something that even Yamamoto Genryu's hadn't done. Yet Ayan had done it. Chapter 54, A Total and Absolute Domination Impossible. You think that kind of trick will fool a 3-year-old, Ayan? Collapse, Sakanad. Hirako Shinji shouted again, calling out his Zanpakuto's release command and true name. Refusing to believe what was happening. But nothing happened. Just as Ayan had said. Sakanad remained in its sealed form, no matter how many times he called its name or tried to release it. His Shikai had truly been sealed. Like it had reverted to a state from 100 years ago. Ayan looked at him silently, his expression calm and cold. PFFT. Before Shinji could speak, Ayan pushed the blade forward, driving it deeper into Shinji's body. The pain surged again. My mistake, Ayan said coldly. I forgot. Your Sakanad is sealed, which means the reversed world effect is gone. When I push my hand forward, it really does go forward. He didn't sound sorry at all. Blood foamed from Shinji's mouth, and he coughed it out toward Ayan. But before it reached him, it was swallowed into the swirling black mist still radiating from Ayan's hand. Mind your manners. Don't spray blood everywhere. You're still a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, aren't you, Hirako Shinji? Ayan calmly pulled his Zanpakuto out, blood spraying from the wound as Shinji fell to his knees. Only by using his sealed sword as a crutch could he keep himself from collapsing entirely. Ayan sheathed his blade with a slow, deliberate motion. I'll only say this once. If you want to live, put away your sword. Stop clinging to illusions. It's over. Just like your position as captain. It's all over, Hirako Shinji. What did you say? I'm the captain of the 5th Division. You think you can replace me? Dream on. Shinji roared with rage, all sense of reason forgotten. Even though his body was falling apart and he could barely stand, his spiritual pressure surged. He leapt into the air, blade raised, his lips forming a familiar command. Looks like you don't understand human speech. Ayan's voice turned colder. He raised his hand again. Before Shinji could finish his Bankai call-out, an overwhelming gravitational pull yanked the Zanpakuto from his hands. His fingers opened involuntarily, and the sword flew into Ayan's grasp. Shinji reached for it. But it was useless. His body couldn't fight against the crushing gravity. The sword grew further and further away. Clack. The moment Sakanad landed in Ayan's hand, Shinji felt a deep chill run through him. That same overwhelming silence. The same eerie disconnect from his Zanpakuto spirit. Returned. His Bankai, the most powerful ability he possessed, wouldn't respond. He couldn't even feel Sakanad anymore. Nurturing it? To me, it's nothing more than a pebble in the way of my shadow. And you're the same, Hirako Shinji. Ayan twirled the sword between his fingers, then casually tossed it away. Sakashima Yokoshima Hapafuskari. Shinji shouted, attempting to force out his Bankai name again, trying to re-establish a connection. But nothing. The Zanpakuto remained lifeless. You should stop shouting now. You already know it's meaningless. Ayan raised his hand again. And launched the blade straight at Shinji. PFFT. The blade stabbed into Shinji's chest, the tip bursting from his back. It was the final straw. His spiritual pressure crashed. Shinji's strength evaporated. With a shuddering gasp, he collapsed backward, landing hard. Blood poured from his wounds, soaking the white hori of the 5th Division and painting the floor beneath him red. He didn't even try to get up. If the first strike had crippled his body, then the loss of his Shikai, the loss of his Bankai, and the complete domination of his Zanpakuto's will had completely crushed his spirit. He didn't struggle anymore. Didn't speak. He just sat there, slumped in a pool of his own blood. Silent. Broken. At that moment, Hirako Shinji truly accepted the situation. Just like Ayan said. It was over. There were no more illusions. No more resistance. The difference in power was too great. A captain. Reduced to this. Captain Hirako is second only to legends like Captain Yamamoto, Anohana, Kiraku, Yukitake, Kuachiki, and Shutara. How did he get destroyed so easily? It was like a captain disciplining a squad member. He couldn't even fight back. And he couldn't even use Bankai. He was defeated with a single move. The 600 Shinigami watching outside the barrier looked at each other, stunned. This was a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Even in a sealed state, a captain was a walking catastrophe. And Hirako Shinji wasn't some newly promoted captain. He was a veteran, with over 100 years of experience and mastered Bankai. But the result? Completely helpless. Destroyed. Like a grain of sand brushed away by the wind. Is it over? Shiba Ishin, who was tasked with monitoring the battle, murmured softly. He was one of the few who truly understood Ayan's strength. But even he hadn't expected this. This wasn't a captain-level battle. A total and absolute domination. Chapter 55, a failed man lying in his own blood. He couldn't even activate Bankai. No wonder the head captain holds him in such high regard, always lamenting how he missed the chance to take him as a disciple because of a brief misjudgment. To stop the former captain from even using Bankai. What kind of strength is that? Chojiro Sasaki looked at Hirako Shinji. Battered, bloodied, collapsed in a pool of his own blood. Then he turned his gaze to Ayan, who stood there calm and composed, as if defeating a captain-level Shinigami was no different than taking a stroll. He understood. This wasn't just a clash between two Shinigami. It was a complete overpowering. Both as warriors, and as wielders of Zanpakuto. As a Shinigami, Hirako was beneath Ayan. As Zanpakuto, Sukanade was inferior to Kafuon. And that's what created the overwhelming one-sided defeat. He is strong. Really strong. Anohana Yachiru, the first Kinpachi, spoke with a deep look in her eyes. Her gaze rested on the sheathed Zanpakuto at Ain's waist. With her experience, wisdom, and power. Being one of the oldest and most fearsome captains. Anohana could see what others could not. Just like Genryu's Ishigakuni Yamamoto. The moment she had seen Ain Shike, witnessed the strange and powerful nature of Kafuon, she knew that this Zanpakuto was no ordinary blade. Your Zanpakuto is very pleased that you used her to completely dominate a Captain Imperial Guard, rendering Hirako Shinji unable to even activate Bankai. To reward you, she has revealed a new ability developed during her Bankai training. A perfected Shikai ability, Throne of Heaven, Rule of One. Defeating Hirako Shinji wasn't just a battle won. It came with a gift. Ain didn't just turn the awe of those watching, his Zanpakuto, Kafuon, gave him her strongest Shikai technique. The ultimate form of the Kafuon. It's only Shikai, but its power already rivals. No, surpasses. Most Bankai. As Kafuon's new ability, Throne of Heaven, Rule of One, unfolded in his mind, Ain couldn't help but smile in surprise. This wasn't an ability that required complex technique, sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kidou. This alone. Just this. Was enough to dominate Soul Society. Just then, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Yan. Hirako Shinji's voice, though hoarse and weak, reached him from behind. Need something, Captain Hirako? Oh wait, I forgot. You're no longer the 5th Division's captain. Just another member now. So please. Don't call me by my first name. Ain turned his head just slightly, casting a sideways glance toward Shinji, who was still struggling to lift his head from the blood-soaked ground. Cut the act. I hate you. If you don't kill me today, I swear. I'll kill you one day. Shinji forced a grin, blood trailing down his lips. That so? Ain laughed. It wasn't mocking nor dismissive, just amused. What are you laughing at? Shinji expected anything. An attack, silence, even a retreat. But not that laugh. It was too casual. Too indifferent. And he realized. Ain truly didn't care. You don't understand, Hirako Shinji. I never once saw you as an opponent. You're not a captain anymore. You're a relic. A failed man lying in his own blood. From now on, whether you bark or whimper like a beaten dog, it doesn't matter. You no longer have the qualifications. Ain turned and began walking toward the exit of the barrier. Erected by Shiba Ishin himself. It was a strong barrier, built to contain captain-level battles. But Ain walked through it as if it didn't exist at all. Honestly, I thought you'd go back and kill Hirako Shinji, Ishin said, standing outside. Good thing you didn't. That would have been reckless. It means you're still listening to me. Still see me as your teacher, at least a little. Ain looked calm. No. He's not worth killing. Ain's voice was dismissive. Kill Hirako Shinji? What a waste. This man was once captain of the 5th Division. That title alone made him a valuable resource. In the whole Syriite AI, how many other advanced research specimens like him could be found? Killing Shinji with a single strike might look dramatic, but that would waste a potential treasure. Why would he waste him? Especially now, when he had so much to prepare. Over the last month, not only had his own spiritual pressure, sword art, and flash steps grown rapidly. But so had his brother. His Zanpakuto was already at the edge of unlocking Bankai. It was just a matter of time. His spiritual pressure had reached a level 12 rank. As for Kido. He could already cast all Hado and Bakudo below number 80 without incantation, and their power wasn't any weaker than full chant versions. His Kendo had evolved on its own. Born from observing Anohana Yachiru's technique, and now a unique style of its own. Even though he didn't use hand-to-hand combats much, he was already stronger than Yoruichi in that field. And in terms of flash steps, Yoruichi might seem like the fastest, but Aizen was already on her heels. And gaining fast. Although Ain could still defeat him easily, he knew Aizen was catching up. And that meant trouble. And opportunity. because Aizen's actions were becoming more daring. 3 days ago, using Kyoka Suigetsu's power, Aizen had begun sneaking into all corners of Siriite AI libraries, databases, and the 12th Division Research Center. Everything except the Great Spirit Book Gallery was within his reach. With the information he gathered, Aizen was already preparing for the holification experiment. Ain, seeing this unfold, obviously had no intention of killing someone as valuable as Hirako Shinji. After all, if his Zanpakuto and spiritual pressure one day hit a wall, if he needed to break past the limits of a Shinigami, if he needed to master the holification process, then the Hogyoka would eventually come into play. And for that, he'd need high-quality experimental material. Just like Hirako Shinji. Chapter 56, Hori betrayed me. You. Shiba Ishin frowned, wanting to say more. But seeing Ain's calm expression, clearly disregarding Hirako Shinji altogether, Ishin opened his mouth but didn't know what to say in the end. After all, he had witnessed everything between the two. From start to finish, it was Hirako Shinji who provoked things. If it were him, and someone kept picking on his younger brother without reason, he wouldn't have held back either. He might have done exactly what Ain did or worse. I can't speak for Hirako. But as his lieutenant, I still want to thank you for holding back. Despite everything, you showed mercy again and again. You didn't take his life. Thank you, Captain Ain. At that moment, Sarugaki Hori arrived. Her reaction surprised many. As the 5th Division's lieutenant, she had watched Hirako get slashed down, bloodied and humiliated. Yet instead of blaming Ain, she came forward, bowed respectfully, and offered her thanks. It's nothing, Ain replied casually. I already said, I won't take it to heart. Go check on him. I didn't kill him, and with Captain Anohana treating him, he'll survive. But for the next month, don't expect him to even get out of bed, let alone walk around in shoes. Looking at Hori's sincere thanks, a strange glint flashed behind Ain's glasses. He was starting to understand something. Why his younger brother, a ruler in their past life, enjoyed toying with subordinates and enemies alike. He had just publicly humiliated Hirako Shinji. Cut him down, stolen his captain's seat. And yet Hirako's own lieutenant came forward to express gratitude. This twisted situation felt amazing. No wonder Aizen always kept Hinamori and Hitsugai alive despite everything. It wasn't just a strategy. Sometimes, controlling people's emotions gives greater satisfaction than just killing them. A throne desired by all. And a sword pointed at it. One wants to kill the king, the other forces them to kneel. On behalf of Hirako, I sincerely thank Captain Ain for his mercy, Hori said with conviction. Just as those words left her mouth, Hirako Shinji, not far away, still being healed by Anohana, heard it and coughed up another mouthful of blood. Whether from the injury or sheer rage, no one could tell. He passed out on the spot. Anohana, while treating him, thought she heard him whisper with the last of his consciousness. Hori betrayed me. Shino Academy. A small figure dashed through the paths and buildings of the campus, fast like a shadow. Like a buzzing hornet. Every step carried her more than 50 meters forward. In mere moments, she crossed the entire grounds. From the academy gate to the first class, it took her just over a minute. The girl landed silently, kneeling before the waiting Shiyuin Yoruichi. Lady Yoruichi, said Suifeng respectfully, kneeling with one knee down. Every word, every gesture was filled with deep admiration. As someone born into the lower noble Feng family, Suifeng dedicated her life to protecting the Shiyuin family. To her, Yoruichi was more than a noble. Suifeng, how did it go? Yoruichi asked with a smile, not treating her like a servant, but a friend. The rest of the class looked over curiously. Even the proud Byakuya Kuichiki didn't turn his head, but his ears were fully focused. After all, this was a captain-level duel. A newly graduated student, challenging a senior captain Imperial Guard? Such a thing hadn't happened in centuries. It wasn't just the academy that was paying attention. Siriite AI itself was watching. Ain won. Suifeng's voice was calm, but inside she felt slightly sour. Still, she didn't lie. She told the truth, clearly and directly. I knew it, Yoruichi said, smiling with delight. He was destined to win. Graduation and straight to captain. In over 2,000 years of academy history, this has never happened before. Ain Sosuke. His name will be etched into the history of the Soul Society. Gisukura, Kame Morisajan, and others all gasped in disbelief. Even though they had expected Ain to win. Especially after what he did to Hirako in the kendo gym before, pinning him like a picture on a wall. This was still something else. That was just swordsmanship. Neither had used Shikai or Bankai back then. So there was still some doubt left. Now, with confirmation that Ain had defeated Hirako in a full duel, everyone was stunned. After all, Hiroko Shinji wasn't just any opponent. He was a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Ayan was just a student only a month into being a Shinigami. How did he win? Tell us everything, Suifeng. The class leaned forward, eager to know every detail. Ayan used Shikai and won in a single move. There was no equal battle, only one-sided domination. Oh, and Hiroko tried to use Bankai to fight back. But he didn't even get the chance. Ayan disarmed him before he could even activate it. Suifeng explained everything calmly, without exaggeration. Just Shikai? Defeated a Captain Imperial Guard in one blow? Didn't even let him use Bankai? What kind of strength is that? He's only been training for a month. That's terrifying. When we graduate, we'll be greeting him as Captain Ayan. The students were shaken. This wasn't just genius. It was monstrous. He had joined the same class as them only a month ago. While they were still attending lectures, he had already defeated a captain and taken his position. Students and captains. Two completely different worlds. Power, status, identity. Everything had changed. Ayan his strength has reached such a level? Byakuya thought, fists clenched tightly. Ever since losing to Ayan, Byakuya had thrown himself into training. He had accepted fragments of the Soul King from Kuachiki Jinrai and pushed himself far beyond his limits. Each day, his growth was visible. He had truly believed he could catch up. He believed he saw the light of surpassing Ayan. But now, he realized it was all an illusion. That light was nothing more than a mirage. An unreachable dream. Chapter 57. Because Ayan Sosuke became a captain before you? Byakuya Kuachiki was shocked. Hirahara Kisuke was also shocked. Everyone who witnessed the fight. Or even just heard about it. Was stunned by Ayan's strength. Only one person didn't react the same way. Ayan Sosuke. He was the only one in the entire Spiritual Arts Academy who, after hearing the full details of the duel between Ayan and Hiroko Shinji from Suifeng, remained completely calm. Not even slightly surprised. For this past month, just as Ayan had silently watched and understood Ayan's progress, Ayan had also been watching Ayan. Every step. Every breakthrough. Every change in spiritual pressure. He had witnessed all of it. And as expected, it confirmed what he already suspected. At this rate, based on Ayan's training and progression, it will take him no more than a year for his Zanpakuto, spiritual pressure, sword art, hand-to-hand combats, flash steps and Kido, to all reach the upper limit of what's possible for a Shinigami. No. Maybe not even a full year. It seems I'll have to pick up the pace as well. This feeling of standing still is starting to feel irritating. Ayan stood by the window, his calm eyes reflecting the moonlight. He had already made a decision. He would apply for early graduation. Not in a year, but 10.5 months from now. He had no interest in dragging things out. Since he had decided to reveal a portion of his strength and no longer remain hidden, staying at the Shino Academy would only slow him down. The next important step. Whether it was to experiment with hollowification, explore the truth of the Soul King, or reach the top of the Soul Society, was to enter the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Yes. He nearly forgot. There were also the 4 great noble houses to consider. 1st Division Barracks, Room 24. Inside a solemn room, 3 captains were seated. Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni, Joshiro Yukitake, and Shun Sakuraku. After witnessing Ayan's graduation duel, they didn't head to the 5th Division Barracks. Instead, they returned to the 1st Division, waiting quietly. There was no need to see the result with their own eyes, because they already knew what the outcome would be. Still, when the 1st Division's Special Task Squad returned and reported the detailed events of the duel, even they couldn't help but be shaken. Has he already reached that level? Yukitake murmured, stunned. Even among past Shinigami hailed as geniuses, it often took centuries. Hundreds of years. To reach such heights. But he did it in 1 month. In all the long years of the Soul Society's history, it had produced many incredible talents. Even the 3 present here were among the best in their own times. Yukitake, though bound by his fragile body, wielded a twin Zanpakuto. Something extremely rare in Siriite AI. He was even rumored to have a connection to the Soul King's lineage. Yet, before Ayan, even he felt small. What about you, Shunsei? Yamamoto turned toward the usually carefree man who had remained silent the entire time, sipping tea with his hat lowered. But this time, it wasn't just a casual question. He was testing him. Because what came next wasn't just about Ayan's rise. It was about how Siriite AI would respond to it. Shunsei understood. Ayan? He said after pretending to think. To be honest, even I might not be able to defeat him right now. Yamamoto nodded. That was enough. All right, he said. Start preparing for the captain's inauguration ceremony. Also, announce that Hiroko Shinji will be dismissed as captain of the 5th Division. and Sarugaki Hori removed as lieutenant. We'll finalize it after the ceremony. Yamamoto's voice remained stern, but there was a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. Ayan was now the captain of the 5th Division. If the nobles wanted to interfere, if they dared to challenge this decision, they could do so openly. If they won, Yamamoto and Shunsei would support Ayan and shield him from backlash. If they lost, Yamamoto and Shunsei would clean up the mess and present Ayan as an even greater asset to the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Either way, Ayan would grow more attached to the organization and less likely to rebel. It was political timing. In Yamamoto's heart, his entire view of Ayan had changed. He once saw him as just a student, a gifted Shinigami. But now, he saw him as an equal. Someone who might one day shape the future of the Soul Society itself. The duel between Ayan and Hiroko Shinji, held in front of the 5th Division barracks, was impossible to hide. And once Yamamoto officially announced Ayan's appointment as the 5th Division captain, the entire Siriite AI was thrown into a storm. The facts were impossible to deny. In 1 month of enrollment, he graduated early as the top student. On the day of graduation, he walked into the 5th Division alone and defeated Hiroko Shinji, in front of 2 captains and 200 elite Shinigami. He was immediately promoted. Not as a seated officer, not even as a lieutenant. But directly to captain. Such a record-breaking promotion was unheard of. As the news spread across Siriite AI, nobles and captains alike were stunned. 6th Division barracks. The soft sound of a chess piece hitting the board echoed through the room. Then crack. The piece slipped from Kuichiki Koga's fingers and clattered onto the ground. Across from him sat Kuichiki Jinrai, the head of the Kuichiki clan. "You're distracted," Jinrai said calmly, placing a stone of his own. He didn't even glance at the fallen piece. His face remained perfectly composed, as if Ayan's sudden rise had no effect on him. "My apologies, Lord Jinrai." Koga bowed slightly and picked up the chess piece with care. Even though he was Jinrai's son-in-law, the rules of the noble family were strict. As a man who had married into the house, every movement, every word, had to follow etiquette. Because the Kuichiki clan, as one of the 4 great houses, was always under the eyes of the Soul Society. "Are you upset?" Jinrai asked suddenly, his voice sharp. "Because Ayan Sosuke became a captain before you? Because he's now above you in rank?" Koga froze. His ambitions and pride were no secret to Jinrai. Jinrai had once personally broken ties with Tsunayashiro Tokunada just to bring Koga into the family. Because his talent was that extraordinary. Koga had been able to use a portion of the Soul King's fragments, integrating them into his Zanpakuto. His Zanpakuto, Muramasa, was a rare and dangerous blade. One that could control and rebel against other Shinigami. In Jinrai's eyes, Koga was a natural weapon. A protective shield for the Kuichiki family. Anyone who wished harm upon them would have to weigh the risk of being silently eliminated in their sleep. But no matter how powerful he was, there was a problem. Koga had the power, yes. But he lacked the will to control it. His bond with Muramasa was fragile. And that made all the difference. Chapter 58, how could he accomplish all this? No, Master Jinrai. Kuichiki Koga quickly denied it when Jinrai Kuichiki exposed his inner thoughts with just 1 sentence. But the flicker of unwillingness in his eyes betrayed the truth he was trying to hide. "You're the son-in-law of the Kuichiki clan," Jinrai said calmly. "You participated in the Hugo expedition and helped suppress the Shinigami rebellion. And yet, to this day, you're still only the 3rd seat of Squad 6. Not even a lieutenant. Of course you're dissatisfied, aren't you?" Koga hesitated but ultimately nodded, his voice low and bitter. Yes, Master Jinrai. You're right. I bled for Siriite AI. I risked my life for 13 Division of Imperial Guards," he continued. "But what about Ayan Sosuke? He's just a student who just graduated from the Shino Academy. He has no achievements, no qualifications. How is he worthy of becoming a captain, leading the entire 5th Division?" Koga still wanted to argue, but when his gaze met Jinrai's sharp and disappointed eyes, his tone softened and turned defensive. Was it just because he defeated a seated captain in a duel? If that's the standard, I can do the same. No, better. With my Zanpakuto. Muramasa. Master Jinrai. Koga's voice rose with emotion. Although he bore the Kuichiki name and wore the noble's star-patterned scarf and red floral hakama exclusive to highborns, it couldn't change the fact, he was an outsider. Married into the Kuichiki clan. Because of this, he had never stopped trying to prove himself. He wanted to show Jinrai, the clan, and all of Siriite AI that he. Kuichiki Koga. Was worthy of the Kuichiki name. To become a captain of the 13 Division of Imperial Guards, equal in rank and honor to Jinrai himself, was the best way to do that. However, Koga also knew the 3 paths to becoming a captain of the Imperial Guard. And they were all tightly bound by rules that Jinrai had personally enforced. Start from the bottom. From seated officer, to vice captain, and only then, to captain. Because the Kuachiki clan was the leader of all noble families, a symbol of dignity and tradition, they had to act above reproach. No shortcuts, no dishonor. It was fine to become a captain point so long as it was by being nominated and elected by the other captains. Challenging and defeating a captain in a duel? Absolutely not. That would invite accusations of corruption and tyranny. Because of this, even though Koga had possessed captain-level strength for 50 years, he remained only a third seat. Foolishness. Jinrai's voice boomed in the chamber. His disappointment was evident. Master Jinrai? Koga was stunned. Jinrai had never scolded him so sharply before. Is your vision really this narrow? So short-sighted? You really think just defeating a captain qualifies you to replace them? You think Ayan Sosuke became captain of Squad 5 just because he beat Hirako Shinji in a duel? The more Koga remained blind to the truth, the more Jinrai's disappointment deepened. But he couldn't simply discard Koga. After all, he was the son-in-law Jinrai had personally approved, and his Zanpakuto Muramasa was extremely powerful. There was too much potential to throw away over one flaw. Not to mention, he had already married Jinrai's daughter. Isn't that why? Koga asked, still confused. Naive. Jinrai took a step forward, voice cold. Let me ask you. Who was present when Ayan Sosuke took his early graduation exam? Koga blinked. He tried to recall. Captain Yukitake. Head Captain Yamamoto. Captain Anohana. And you, Master Jinrai. Jinrai said nothing, watching Koga carefully. Koga's voice slowed as the realization began to dawn. And Shiba Ishin? Jinrai added calmly, exactly. You don't think it's strange that a mere graduation exam required 5 captains to be present? Koga's mouth opened slightly, but he didn't speak. It seems you're finally starting to understand. The 13 Division of Imperial Guards has 13 captains. For one student's graduation, 5 of them came personally. Some of the most senior, most powerful figures in all of Seoul society. Ayan Sosuke, like you, is from Rakongai. But when you graduated, even with the Kuachiki name, even as my son-in-law, only Yukitake and I attended. The head captain did not come. None of the others did either. Jinrai's eyes glinted sharply. The difference between you and him is the storm that gathers when he moves. The head captain already wished to take him as a disciple. Captain Anohana favored him. Captain Shiba treated him as a disciple. And the others. Captain Joshiro and Captain Kiraku. Those two who were always playful and carefree. They stood beside him as well. And don't forget. Most of the remaining captains are friends of Hirako Shinji. They would normally support Hirako without hesitation. Yet none of them opposed Ayan after the duel. Even the head captain accepted the result. Strength is only the foundation. What he has is will, tactics, strategy. All combined, that is why he became captain. Jinrai looked deep into Koga's soul. Now tell me. Let's say you followed Ayan's path. You challenged and defeated Hirako Shinji with Muramasa. But the head captain, Anohana, Yukitake, Kiraku, and Shiba. All disagreed with your appointment. Then what? The room was silent. For the first time, Koga realized how little he understood the true forces at play. He might defeat a captain with Muramasa, but could he also win over the hearts of 5 of the most powerful and respected captains? Even Yamamoto Genryuzai himself? No matter how arrogant he had been before, even he didn't believe that was possible. Master Jinrai, he finally said, his voice no longer defiant. Ayan Sosuke had only been at the Shino Academy for 1 month. How could he accomplish all this? Koga's tone was no longer bitter, only deeply puzzled. Defeating Hirako Shinji was already shocking enough. But to also earn the backing of 5 captains in less than 30 days? It was beyond comprehension. Chapter 59, ask yourself honestly, are you a genius? Because you ignored someone. A name that was almost completely overshadowed by Ayan Sosuke's dazzling brilliance. Kuachiki Jinrai's gaze sharpened as he stared straight at Kuachiki Koga. Ayan Sosuke? Kuachiki Koga paused for a moment. A name suddenly flashed through his mind, and he blurted it out instinctively. Exactly. Ayan's radiance is so overwhelming that most forget his younger brother. But Ayan. He's a once-in-a-century genius among Shinigami. Even compared to you, Koga, you fall short. The facts have proven that Ayan is a real genius. In the elite class, even in the entire Shino Academy, his grades are second only to Ayan, but in terms of popularity and reputation, he's number 1. Most importantly, it's his actions. Koga, if you look through Seoul society's entire history, have you ever seen a Shinigami openly reveal the true abilities of their Zanpakuto like him? Just to pave the way for future generations? Kuachiki Jinrai's voice carried a trace of regret, flickering faintly in his eyes. Back then, he should not have listened to Tsunayashiro Tokunoda. Asking Byakuya Kuachiki to secretly test Heian was a mistake. Though he had been careful, ensuring the trail would lead back only to Tokonada, he couldn't shake the guilt. Especially now, when Heian and Aizen's strength, talent, and intellect were unfolding before his eyes. Never once. Kuachiki Koga gritted his teeth. Being told he was inferior to Aizen stirred bitterness in his chest. But in terms of magnanimity, even he had to admit Aizen was ahead. The Zanpakuto is the core of a Shinigami's power. Though the academy requires a student to unlock their Shikai before graduation, who can truly verify their real abilities or even the Shikai's name? But look at Aizen. He openly shared the name of his Zanpakuto. Kyoka Suigetsu. And explained its Shikai ability. Not only that, he actively helped others achieve Shikai, especially those who entered the academy without having awakened theirs. Which captain in the 13th Division of Imperial Guards wouldn't admire someone like that? What member of Central 46 wouldn't feel reassured by someone so selfless? Kuachiki Jinrai slowly placed a white piece down on the go board before him. And what about Hirako Shinji? He was the one who kept targeting Aizen with baseless charges. He even used the full extent of his authority as captain of the 5th Division just to suppress Aizen. What do you think that made the other captains feel? What did the noble houses think? What did it make every Shinigami in Siriate AI believe? Now, think carefully. How did Aizen act through all of this? He was humble but never afraid, assertive yet respectful. When he cut down Hirako Shinji, it was decisive, but he left just enough room for retreat. He showed strength but didn't flaunt it. He acted exactly as needed in every moment. Jinrai's voice was full of admiration for Aizen and buried within it, a deep regret. He had once believed Kuachiki Koga could be a great asset to the Kuachiki family. But after seeing the overwhelming brilliance of Aizen and Aizen, he couldn't help but compare. And compared to the Sosuke brothers, Koga was painfully ordinary. His Zanpakuto, Muramasa, was indeed powerful. But without the ambition and clarity to master its illusionary powers fully, it was just a blade with no master. Go and walk around the squads in Siriate AI. Listen to what people say about Aizen. They say, he treats his brother like a piece of his heart. He drew his sword and cut down a captain for him. I've been captain of the 6th Division for many years. I've never seen anyone bring down a well-connected squad captain and walk away with not just the position, but the admiration of nearly all the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Even lieutenants and seated officers in the 5th Division are proud to serve under him. Jinrai exhaled deeply. Even Byakuya, who received the finest noble education since childhood, doesn't have that kind of presence. Hard to believe Aizen is a Rakongai-born Shinigami. Master Jinrai. Can't I replicate what he did? Kuachiki Koga still refused to give up. Seeing Aizen surpass him and become a captain, while he remained stuck as the 3rd seat of the 6th Division, gnawed at his pride. Using Aizen as a reference, he was already trying to come up with a plan to follow the same path. Replicate what? Jinrai's face turned cold. Do you have Aizen's once-in-a-generation talent? Do you have his charisma? The kind that could even move Kenpachi from the 1st generation? Do you have his aptitude and spiritual pressure, strong enough that even Genri Uzai Yamamoto once said he wished to take him as a personal disciple? And do you have a younger brother like Aizen, who willingly sacrificed his own Zanpakuto's potential, making himself a public shield just to clear the way for you? Kuachiki Jinrai's tone sharpened as he continued. Aizen looked like a victim. Persecuted by Hirako Shinji. But it was that drama that tilted the entire situation in Aizen's favor. Hirako's downfall came from targeting the wrong man at the wrong time. Not everyone is Aizen Sosuke. And not everyone has a younger brother like Aizen Sosuke. You want to run before you've even learned to walk. Ask yourself honestly. Are you a genius? If you, Kuachiki Koga, had even a tenth of the Sosuke brothers' talent or ability, I would have bet the entire Kuachiki clan on you becoming the next captain commander. But do you? Really? His voice thundered through the chamber, then fell silent. Without another word, he turned and walked out, frustration and disappointment trailing behind him. He had once believed saving Kuachiki Koga from Tokonada's purge and bringing him into the Kuachiki family was a favor. A gift. Over the years, he'd invested as much effort in him as in Byakuya. And this was what he got in return, a man with an inflated ego, a sharp sword, but no true direction. A man whose ambition outpaced his clarity, and whose pride might one day bring disaster to the Kuachiki name. 50 years. And he still hasn't matured, he muttered to himself as he walked away. But he's still my son-in-law. With that much strength, he shouldn't rot away in the 6th Division. He won't get the training he needs there. Send him to Squad 1. It was a decision made out of duty, not affection. However, he never noticed that behind him, Kuachiki Koga sat cross-legged, fists clenched, his nails digging into his palms, his eyes turning bloodshot with rage. Say I'm not as good as Aizen. Say I'm not as good as Aizen. But you won't even let me fight them. If you hadn't held me down all these years, I would have already taken the seat of captain. Kuachiki Jinrai, one day I'll prove to you and to the entire Kuachiki clan that I wasn't unworthy of your name. You are unworthy of me. His hands trembled slightly, but he didn't relax his grip. His resolve fueled by humiliation and resentment only grew stronger. Chapter 60. This is why I'll always be in his shadow. First Division. Meeting hall inside the spacious conference room of Squad 1. The captains of the 13th Division of Imperial Guard stood in two orderly lines on either side of the room, flanking the central platform where the leader of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni, stood at the head with his cane. Behind each of the captains stood their respective lieutenants, forming a solemn assembly. Suddenly, boom! Genryu's tapped his cane hard on the ground. The resounding thud echoed through the hall, instantly snapping everyone to attention. Silence fell. All eyes turned to the head captain. Today, Yamamoto Genryu's began in his deep, commanding voice, I have summoned you all here to announce 3 matters. First is a personnel change for Squad 6. He paused momentarily, sweeping his eyes over the room. Effective immediately, Kuachiki Koga, former 3rd seat of Squad 6, will be transferred to Squad 1. He is to be appointed as captain of the Special Forces, under the direct authority of the 1st Division. A small wave of surprise spread through the room. The announcement was direct, leaving no room for doubt. Tap. The man in question, Kuachiki Koga, was the only one present who was neither a captain nor lieutenant. Upon hearing the head captain's words, his heart surged with excitement. Having served for decades as 3rd seat of Squad 6, he knew well the significance of this post. The Special Forces operated under the direct command of Squad 1. Answerable only to Yamamoto Genryu's himself. Though outside the 13th Division of Imperial Guards' standard squad hierarchy, their authority and status were substantial. Compared to being the 3rd seat of a noble-led squad, this was a major elevation. Kuachiki Koga stepped forward quickly, dropping to one knee before the head captain. Koga shall not disappoint the captain commander's great trust, he said loudly, unable to hide the joy in his voice. In Soul Society, protocol was strict. Regardless of noble lineage, anyone below the rank of lieutenant had to kneel before the captain commander. Lieutenants were allowed to bow. Only the 13 squad captains were exempt from kneeling before anyone. Not even the captain commander himself. Stand down. Yamamoto Genryu's tone was neutral. His face revealed neither approval nor displeasure. Privately, he felt conflicted. If it weren't for Kuachiki Jinrai's support and the unique danger of Kuachiki Koga's Zanpakuto, he would never have appointed such a man to this post. He had long heard about Koga's lack of drive. And today only confirmed it. Being overly excited about a position like this exposed weakness. He lacked the mental fortitude befitting his power. Strength and resolve must match. Koga's did not. Yes, sir. Still riding his excitement, Koga bowed again and stepped back into formation. This time among the lieutenants. The weight of his new title felt heavy, but he had yet to realize the silent disappointment in Kuachiki Jinrai's eyes. Yamamoto Genryu's then turned to the second matter. I believe most of you have heard by now. Hirako Shinji, former captain of Squad 5, has recently abused his authority as a captain. The hall remained still. A month ago, he entered the Shino Academy without proper cause and used his authority to intimidate students. Following this, Aon Sosuke, seeking to protect his younger brother, issued an official captain's duel challenge to Hirako Shinji. The duel was conducted under the observation of Captain Anohana, Captain Ishin, Lieutenant Sasaki, and more than 600 Shinigami. In that duel, Aon Sosuke decisively defeated Hirako Shinji. After the duel, I personally examined Aon's strength and character, along with 2 other captains. He has proven himself to possess not only great power but also the admiration of both students and Imperial Guard members alike. Therefore, I hereby appoint Aon Sosuke, graduate of the Shino Academy, as the new captain of Squad 5. As soon as the words fell, creak. The conference room doors opened slowly. A moment later, under the focused gaze of every captain and lieutenant. Some filled with curiosity, others with envy or disbelief. Aon stepped forward with calm, unhurried steps. He didn't falter under pressure. He walked between the 2 lines of seated captains, until he stood directly in front of Yamamoto Genryu's. Long time no see, Principal, Aon said with a faint smile. A ripple spread through the room. This is no longer the academy, Genryu's replied, a hint of warmth hidden in his deep voice. You are now Captain Aon of Squad 5. Aon nodded slightly. Understood, Headmaster. Though the correction had been made, Yamamoto Genryu's didn't press the matter. Instead, the faintest smile flickered across his face. Those familiar with him. Anohana Retsu, Shun Sekiraku, Yukitake Joshiro, and Kuachiki Jinrai. Knew what it meant. The old man was pleased. Though he didn't say it outright, and still calling him headmaster was a sign of deep respect. And Yamamoto didn't mind it in the least. Quite the opposite. The message was clear to everyone. To Yamamoto Genryusai, Ayan was not just another captain. He was a student he held in the same regard as his personal disciples, Kiraku and Yukitake. A whisper passed between the captains. In the past, only two ever had a special way of addressing the head captain, one murmured. Shunsei Kiraku, who called him Mr. Yamamoto, and Yukitake, who called him Mr. Genryusai. But now, there's a third. Ayansosuke. That weight. The favor of the head captain. Was something no ordinary Shinigami could hope for. Back in the ranks. Kuichiki Koga's smile faded. Though he too had just received a captain-level post, the difference in status between him and Ayan was now crystal clear. The Special Forces were a side unit, without a formal squad. The 5th Division, however, was a core team of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards. Its captain was a frontline figure in Siriai's power structure. The difference was like night and day. This is why I'll always be in his shadow. Jealousy flickered in Koga's heart. But that didn't stop him from trying to seize the spotlight. Suddenly, he stepped forward, ignoring Kuichiki Jinrai's silent glare of warning. "You are being disrespectful," he barked. "The Captain Commander should be addressed as Your Excellency or Captain Commander, not Headmaster." The entire hall turned silent again. Even captains like Muguruma Kinsai, Atrabashi Rojiro, and Akawa Love, who had been plotting to trip up Ayan for Shinji's sake, paused in surprise. Did Kuichiki Koga really just try to correct Ayansosuke in front of Genryusai? Chapter 61, he could drag the entire Kuichiki clan down with him. Whose subordinate is this guy? So bold. Can't he tell that even the Captain Commander himself allowed the title Headmaster? When Muguruma Kinsai, Atrabashi Rojiro, and Love Akawa realized the speaker was none other than Kuichiki Koga, the three exchanged glances. A mix of disbelief and pity flashed in their eyes. At first, they were delighted. As the son-in-law of the noble Kuichiki family, Koga posing Ayan was perfect. Someone else to challenge Ayan while they watched from the sidelines. It meant they wouldn't have to go up against him directly. But then, the words that came out of Koga's mouth stunned them. Not in a million years did they expect the Kuichiki family's son-in-law to be so brainless. They had hoped he might confront Ayan in the future. But now, they weren't even sure he'd survive a single clash. At the head of the room, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigakuni cast a brief glance at Kuichiki Koga. Then at Kuichiki Jinrai. His old but piercing eyes might as well have spelled it out. "Jinrai, is this the fool you recommended? Take him away before he embarrasses himself further." Kuichiki Koga, the old man finally spoke, voice firm and calm. "The 1st Division's assembly hall is not a place for idle talk. Step back. Now." Kuichiki Jinrai's expression twitched slightly. What a disgrace, he thought. But even so, with a heavy heart, he had to step forward to clean up the mess. His own family's mess. "Master Jinrai," Koga turned toward him with disbelief. "Did I say something wrong? As a captain, you should be an example for the Imperial Guard." Ayan's words and behavior just now were out of line. He disrespected the Captain Commander. As the newly appointed captain of the Special Forces, shouldn't I remind him of what respect, rules, and authority mean? Koga spoke each word with confidence, thinking he was upholding justice. What he didn't realize was that nearly everyone, captains, lieutenants, even seated officers, were silently looking at him like a complete fool. "You've said enough. You think it's your place to speak now? Apologize to Captain Ayan." Immediately. Kuichiki Jinrai's patience snapped. Just a moment ago, he could have covered this up with his status as clan head. If Koga had simply backed down, it would have ended there. But instead, Koga tried to look righteous. Standing on a moral pedestal while openly challenging the most popular new captain in Siriai. Does he even understand who he's picking a fight with? "Master Jinrai?" Koga looked at him, stunned. "Apologize? He, a Kuichiki, apologized? Impossible." In his mind, people bowed to the Kuichiki. Not the other way around. And now his own father-in-law was siding with Ayan? "I told you to apologize to Captain Ayan. Do it. Now." Jinrai's tone turned frigid. He didn't want to do this. Even though Koga had married into the Kuichiki family and carried the surname, he was still someone Jinrai had protected. But right now, his concern was no longer Koga's pride. What if Ayan started looking deeper into the Kuichiki clan? What if he began asking about past events? Like the attempted assassination at the Spiritual Arts Academy dorm. The stakes had changed. Ayan was no longer a student. He was the captain of the 5th Division. A position of real power. A Shinigami so talented that many believed he could become the strongest in 1,000 years. And Koga still dared to provoke him. Koga looked like he wanted to argue again, but the chill in Jinrai's eyes made him hesitate. Even so, He stubbornly refused to apologize. Deep down, he still believed he was right. What are you waiting for? Need me to speak for you? Jinrai's voice was cold enough to freeze the air. Just days ago, he had spoken with Koga, trying to explain how dangerous it was to cross Aeon. All those words completely wasted. Then, as if things couldn't get worse. Koga, don't apologize. A new voice cut through the tension like a blade. As long as I'm here, no one in this world can humiliate you. From the shadows, a figure appeared next to Koga. In his hand, he held his Zanpakuto, ready to draw. It was Muramasa. As long as he's a Shinigami, no matter how powerful, he can never stand above us nobles. Kuichiki Koga's eyes flickered with emotion when he saw Muramasa, but reason or perhaps fear held him back from ordering an attack. You. Jinrai stared at him now not with anger but with disappointment. No longer seeing a family member, but an enemy. It's alright, Captain Jinrai, Aeon spoke for the first time since the commotion started, his voice calm. I'm always happy to hear what Shinigami from the grassroots level think. I graduated just last month, after all. I became a captain Imperial Guard so quickly, it's true I might not know Soul Society's rules and customs as well as someone like Koga, who's been a third seat for decades. Boom. The sarcasm exploded in the air. He's over 100 years older than Aeon. No wonder Hirako Shinji reportedly coughed blood from Aeon's words. He's lethal even in conversation. It's like his tongue is as sharp as his Zanpakuto. Despite how humble Aeon's words sounded, there was a sharp, mocking tone beneath it. The captains around him, especially Shiba Ishin and Anohana, couldn't help but chuckle quietly. You. Aeon. Kuichiki Koga's face twisted in fury. His chest heaved, breath quickening. He had managed to suppress his rage before, even ignoring Muramasa's urging. But now Aeon's taunts pushed him too far. His hand dropped toward the hilt of his Zanpakuto. Not good. Kuichiki Jinrai's pupil shrank in alarm. He had never imagined Koga was this impulsive. Just a few words, and he's already drawing his sword. The atmosphere inside the meeting hall tensed instantly. Without a second thought, Jinrai disappeared in a flash of flash steps, racing to stop the disaster about to unfold. He had to stop Koga. No matter the cost. Because if that blade was drawn, it wouldn't just be Koga's downfall. It could drag the entire Kuichiki clan down with him. Chapter 62, When you talk to me, use my proper title. Kuichiki Koga might have been ignorant, but Kuichiki Jinrai was not. If Koga really dared to draw Muramasa in front of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards captains and lieutenants within the 1st Division's assembly hall. No matter the reason, no matter who was right or wrong. Both he and Muramasa would be finished. The reason Jinrai accepted Koga into the Kuichiki clan, even marrying his daughter into someone from Rakongai, was not because of his mediocre strength or character. But entirely because of his Zanpakuto, Muramasa. A Zanpakuto capable of manipulating other Zanpakuto. An anomaly in Soul Society. A dangerous weapon. A tool worthy of being used. That was what Kuichiki Jinrai had set his eyes on. But now? Were they really going to lose it all because this idiot couldn't read the room? Slap. Before Jinrai could use flash steps to stop his son-in-law, a figure flashed between Koga and his Zanpakuto. A single hand landed on the hilt just as it began to draw. And pushed it back into the sheath. Whispered. Muramasa. As soon as Koga heard the release command, he panicked. He thought Aeon was about to do what he did to Hirako Shinji. Take Muramasa from him, humiliate him, and destroy his dignity. So, instinctively, he shouted Muramasa's Shikai command. It's over. Kuichiki Jinrai's heart dropped like a stone into the abyss. Presumptuous. As expected. After being silent for a long time. Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni opened his eyes. Gone was the look of senile calmness. His eyes, sharp as blades, gleamed like an unsheathed Zanpakuto. To release his Zanpakuto without permission in front of the head captain, and worse, inside the 1st Division's assembly hall. Was an insult. An unforgivable offense. But then something happened. Silence. Yamamoto's gaze froze. Jinrai's pupils constricted. Even Koga himself was left confused. Muramasa, who had been right by his side just moments ago. Ready to draw his sword. Was gone. Gone. Vanished. Not even a trace of spiritual pressure left behind.